Yo legends! Welcome to Fanfiction Legend. Grab your headphones, because today's story is about to hit different. Disclaimer. I do not claim ownership of this story. All rights belong to the original creators. One Piece, my second uncle is Kizaru. Page 81. I see. Conqueror's Haki, plus the powerful fruit ability, is this what you rely on? After he finished speaking, Raoji and Mabai's did not make any move to avoid or resist the tornado. The howling tornado attacked swiftly and soon surrounded them. The wind pressure as thin as a sharp blade and the sand and gravel sucked into it kept hitting and scratching the bodies of the two people. However, when all the noise disappeared, amidst the storm and dust, the bodies of the two men remained strong. Apart from some minor wounds on Mabai's body, there were no other injuries. How can it be? Nami looked surprised. She is now much more powerful than when she destroyed the Dragon Empire. But even so, her full-strength attack did not leave any obvious injuries on the opponent, which made her a little confused for a moment. Little girl, do you think you are the only one in this world who can obtain the power of the fruit? Mabai's grinned and removed the tonnage restriction on his body. He is an overweight man who ate the ton-squeeze fruit and can control his body weight freely. How could a mere storm possibly counteract his weight measured in tons? At this time, Kyle also reminded. Don't be careless, Nami. They are one of the people who have managed to make it to the top of the pyramid in the Grand Line, which is known as the Pirate Graveyard. If you underestimate these two, you will suffer a great loss. I see. Nami nodded, and her expression instantly became much more stable. The appearance of Mahabashi made her realize that she was not a real god. But just as she was thinking about what to do next, Kyle spoke again. He just turned his head and looked at his friends behind him with a smile on his face. So, to make it fair, all of you come together. Raoji, Mabai's. Wait, isn't this usually what the arrogant protagonist says to the enemy? Are you looking in the wrong direction? However, the next second, an unethical slash directly cut through the void and flew towards Raoji and the other man along the ground. Zoro excitedly held the Wado Ikemanji in his mouth, holding a pitch-black Nichiren sword in each hand, and was full of fighting spirit. We know what to do, Captain. As soon as he finished speaking, his body flew out directly, stirring up blood-red lightning in the air, showing his crazy desire for battle. Behind Zoro was the ghoul Monka, who was holding a huge blood axe, stepping on the ground to create a hole and leaping directly into the sky. Tashiji's face was calm, but she began to chant the spell of advanced ghost arts. Nami, who was already at the front of the battlefield, waved her arms, creating a wind curtain that interfered with vision. Ajin held the beheading knife in his hand, but his body slowly melted into the ground and disappeared. CLO, who had just joined a few days ago, looked at his companions who were showing off their talents, and he pushed the black-framed glasses on his face. After thinking about it, he gracefully came in front of Blackheart and Black Flame, using his body as a barrier to protect these two outsiders who could easily be crushed to death by the aftermath of the battle. Next moment, the brutal slash directly hit Raoji's fist. This old but strong martial artist smashed the powerful blow with just one easy strike. Kid, do you think you can defeat us by relying on numbers? Raoji clenched his fists, which were emitting black smoke, and showed disdain for the attack of Kyle and others. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared right in front of his body. Then a gorgeous slash was swung down. Boom! The snow-white frost on the blade pressed tightly against the arm wrapped in pitch-black domineering aura, pushing Raoji's body outwards a distance of dozens of meters. Behind Frost was Kyle, who was making a downward chopping motion. The chaotic swordplay caused Frost to scream in pain in Kyle's hands. Just when Frost was about to be unable to bear the weight, Kyle's figure disappeared again and came to a position less than 10 meters away from Raoji. As expected of a veteran cadre of the Don Quixote family. He really has some skills. After saying that, Kyle sheathed his knife directly, his eyes sharp. Unfortunately, he doesn't know any sword skills. Otherwise, with that sudden sneak attack just now, he could at least have cut a big bloody mark on Raoji's arm. This good and sharp sword is by his side, and its decorative significance is ultimately greater than its practical value. Don Quixote family. Little ghost, you seem to know a lot? The face of Lao Ji, who was defeated, suddenly became serious. Although it is no secret among the upper echelons of the underground world that Doflamingo is the Joker. But this is definitely not something an East China Sea pirate who has never been to the Grand Line should know. Kyle shrugged and smiled non-committally. Of course. Otherwise, how dare I clamor for you to give up this piece of cake in the East China Sea? He was not worried that this statement would expose his identity as an undercover naval agent. Because just as Lao Ji thought, the fact that Doflamingo was a joker was not a secret at all in the underground world. On the contrary? However, few people in the Navy knew this information. If Kyle's words were heard by Dover, they would only mistakenly believe that he had the support of some underground king behind him. This will increase your bargaining chips in future negotiations. Of course. These little actions were things Kyle thought of on a whim. At this moment, most of his attention was still focused on this battle. Today, Kyle, thanks to the efforts of his partners over this period of time, has a combat power of over 7. This strength has definitely surpassed Rob Lucci during his time on Judicial Island. But the attack he just launched only pushed the old man in front of him a few dozen meters away. I can only say that he is worthy of being a physical training expert in the New World. With a flash of thought, Kai immediately shouted to his companions behind him. Leave this old man to me. You guys go deal with that fat guy. Kyle remembered that Raoji seemed to have a unique skill that could kill the green pepper leader, who was once offered a bounty of 5 million berries, in an instant. In order to prevent any of his companions from being killed instantly by him, Kyle decided to use his body to divide the battlefield. In comparison, Mahabashi's strength lies entirely in the ability of his fruit. As long as we find a way to limit the use of his abilities, this fat man who is like a wine barrel will not be anything to be afraid of. Yes. Captain. The roar came from the sky. Monka, who had stepped onto the whirlwind stairs and reached a high altitude, descended from the sky, swinging a strange scarlet blood-red axe, and chopped down on Mahabas's head with great force. Boom! The enormous force exploded on the land like a falling nuclear bomb. The aftermath of the impact suddenly stagnated, and then immediately swept in all directions like a raging hurricane. The earth cracked, and the cracks invaded outward like lightning. This is enough to show how terrifying Monka's attack from the sky is. But unfortunately, his target had now flexibly moved away from the center of the attack. High in the air, Mahabais adjusted his weight to near zero and flew up with the help of the aftermath of the impact, a drop of cold sweat dripping from his forehead. Are these guys really rookie pirates from the East Sea? This power is enough for them to gain a foothold in the New World, right? At the same time, he was also feeling fortunate in his heart. Fortunately, after seeing Kyle's domineering aura, he did not underestimate the opponent's intention. If he had been hit head-on by an axe like that just now, even he probably wouldn't have been able to withstand it. However, it would be better for such a promising newcomer to die in the East China Sea. Mahabais, who was secretly delighted, suddenly revealed a cruel smile on his face. He lowered his head, overlooking Monka in the deep pit, adjusted his position, and prepared to launch a ton-pressure impact. But suddenly, a strange energy wave suddenly surged around his body. The 90th path of destruction, Black Coffin. The girl's sweet cry became the focus of everyone's attention at this moment. After chanting all the spells, Dashiki's eyes flashed and she pointed at Mahabais in the sky. All of a sudden, with Mahaba's body as the base, a huge black, long coffin suddenly enveloped his body. Immediately, a scream resounded throughout the sky. What? Mahabais in the black coffin felt a black screen before his eyes, and then thousands of swords pierced into his body at the same time. His chest, abdomen, shoulders, and limbs were all scarred by inexplicable cuts from swords and knives. Although it was not fatal, his body was now oozing with blood. Above the ground, Dashigi, who was hidden by the wind barrier, raised the corners of her mouth slightly, breathing heavily and quickly adjusting her spiritual power. As a very powerful ghost method among the broken methods with certain binding abilities, the power of the black coffin can imprison people in a confined space and make them suffer attacks from thousands of swords and blades. This is the most powerful ghost technique she currently possesses. At the same time, it is also the one that consumes the most. Hearing this miserable cry, Lao Ji's face instantly became stunned and shocked. He didn't expect that all of Kyle's subordinates had special skills and could hurt Mabai so quickly. Useless guy. Page 82. Lao Ji turned around and tried to rescue his companion. But Kyle's figure appeared in front of him again, blocking his way to rescue his companions. At this moment, Kyle's eyes flashed with a smile of relief and excitement. He was relieved because his companions were strong enough to challenge the world's top forces. Excited because his first official battle after coming to the pirate world is finally about to begin. Kyle looked straight at Rao Ji, his fighting spirit rising. Master, where are you going? The battle between us has just begun. Chapter 77 Mabai's, what a dish. Kid. Rao Ji's dry eyes suddenly burst into a dazzling golden light. He also saw that the guy who was stopping him in front of him was indeed the owner of the Conqueror's Hockey. Even in this inconspicuous and weakest sea, he could gather such an extraordinary group of subordinates. But you little brats. You are still far from the real power of the world. Boom! An unparalleled powerful aura suddenly erupted from Lao Ji's body, sweeping in all directions like a tsunami. Kyle remained calm despite being struck by this violent aura, but the light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. Is this the power of the new world? It really makes me full of energy. Driven by powerful mental force, a majestic aura that was no less powerful than Rao Ji's instantly burst out from Kyle's body. In terms of physical strength, he is now no less capable than Lao Ji, who has decades of experience in physical skills. And this is the power of the system. Come and feel the passion of the new era. Old man. Boom. Kyle stomped his feet hard, and his entire body instantly turned into a flying cannonball, punching Lao Ji. At this moment, his face was full of smiles. Facing Kyle's fierce attack, Rao Ji was also on high alert, and suddenly made two G-shapes in front of him with his hands. The bulging muscles burst out with hideous blue veins, and through the dark blue tights, they clung to Lao Ji's body like pythons. Stupid kid. I've seen a lot of people like you. Diwang fist lumbar pain style. Eyes suddenly withered. Boom. As soon as the words fell, Rao Ji's figure instantly turned into a bolt of lightning. His hands waved in the air, creating countless phantoms that pierced Kyle's eyes. But right now, Kyle, who had been like a passionate protagonist, suddenly looked calm, and a secret smile suddenly flashed across the corner of his mouth. You've been fooled, old man. Space movement. When his fists crossed, Kyle's figure in the air suddenly flashed and disappeared in an instant. What? Lao Ji was suddenly shocked. But the next moment, Kyle's figure suddenly appeared behind him, and his fist with all his strength suddenly hit Lao Ji's old waist. He did not take into account Lao Ji's advanced age, which was enough for him to live out his life in peace. Boom! Ah! Screams and loud crashing sounds rang out together. Under the tremendous force, Lao Ji's body instantly became a bow shape, and then slammed heavily to the ground. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang. In an instant, a huge deep pit, even more terrifying than the hole caused by the artillery shell nearby, suddenly appeared at the test site. Is this really a battle between humans? Outside the battlefield, Hyan and his daughter stared at the incomprehensible scene before them, their brains in a daze. The punch that was swung with more force than a cannonball and the huge black coffin that appeared out of nowhere in mid-air were like a sword dropped from the sky, shattering their worldview in one blow. However, at this moment, the situation on the field changed again. Suddenly, a loud shouting sounded inside the black coffin. A clearly visible crack suddenly appeared on the mysterious black coffin. A hideous face soaked in blood appeared from the crack. It turned out to be Mahabais, who was imprisoned in the black coffin. Monkeys from the East China Sea. You've pissed me off. The angry Mahabasi suddenly roared. All of a sudden, the huge black coffin exploded, turned into starlight, and disappeared into the air. At this moment, Mahaba's body was like a meteorite falling from the universe, rushing towards the ground rapidly. 10,000 tons of hell. Boom! As the meteorite fell, the earth suddenly let out a painful wail, followed by a huge curtain of smoke and dust dozens of meters high. A hurricane howled past. Nami waved her arms, quickly dispelling the dust that blocked her vision. A huge meteorite crater suddenly appeared in everyone's eyes. Such a strong man is not so easy to be defeated. Seeing Mahabai's break free from the black coffin, there was no surprise in Zoro's eyes, but his body moved quickly and rushed forward. On the other side, Monka was also waving a bloody giant axe and running towards the pit. As he ran, he shouted, "One more time, Nami! Lift me up!" "Okay." The agile hurricane suddenly came to Monka's feet and lifted his body high again. At this moment, Mabai, covered in blood, stood up from the pit. Before he could raise his head, the fluctuations of spiritual energy gathered around him again. The thundering chariot, the cracks in the spinning wheel, the light cluster gathered and split into 6 after despair. The 61st binding method, 6 staff-like prison. Brushing, brushing, brushing. 6 golden light rods appeared above Mahaba's head and fell rapidly towards his joints. All of a sudden, imprisoned his entire body. However, when Mabai saw this, a look of disdain appeared on his face. A boring trick. As he spoke, a dark-armed color domineering aura suddenly appeared on his body, and his muscles bulged. The fruit ability is also activated at this moment. 1,000 tons base. The fat body suddenly leaned forward. In an instant, under the pull of the terrifying gravity, the 6-rod light prison that was enough to imprison CLO was shattered in an instant. How come? Seeing that her bindings were broken so easily, Dashigi's face showed an indescribable shock. "Ah, you're just a bunch of greenhorns. You've still got a long way to go before you can survive in this ocean." "Not necessarily." Just as Mabai was laughing wildly, a figure suddenly jumped out from under his feet. Water escape water prison technique. Using special ninja techniques, Ajin drilled out from the ground and instantly threw out a water ball. Then he quickly formed seals with both hands and swung forward. The water ball hit Mabai's body, then burst and liquid splashed. At the same time, under the effect of Ajin chakra, a round water cage quickly formed and surrounded Mahabai's body. Damn it! What is this? Mahabas was about to repeat his old trick and use his terrifying weight advantage to break free from the cage. But at this moment, a fatal feeling of weakness suddenly struck his heart. This is... It's sea water? Mabai's pupils suddenly dilated, revealing an expression of disbelief. While Ajin stretched out his hands to maintain the water prison technique, he glanced at the ninja tool bag on his waist and grinned. Haha, this is the secret technique that Master Kyle taught me. It's specially used to deal with people with special abilities. Seawater ball. Rat. Mabai's in the water dungeon opened his mouth, trying to make a sound, but ended up drinking a bellyful of liquid of unknown origin. Fortunately, the amount of seawater that the water ball can hold is limited, and he can feel that the limitations of his body are rapidly weakening. As long as he escapes from this water prison, he must crush the black man in front of him into a pulp. Mabai cursed in his heart. But how could Kyle's friends give him this opportunity? Be careful, Jean. The big one is coming. Zoro, who came with a knife in hand, shouted, and his sharp eyes seemed to reflect the universe with thousands of planets. Page 83. As Zoro ran, he whispered. 9 mountains and 8 seas make one world. 1,000 of them make a small 1,000 world. The 3 vehicles are connected. Nothing can be cut off. The secret of the 3 Swords Style, Holy Sword, 3,000 worlds. Burn. My little universe. Boom. A mighty momentum suddenly gushed out from Zoro's body, and then quickly retracted, all returning to Zoro's body. The Shura template from the Golden Saint has a great influence on Zoro's state of mind. At this moment, even if the vast universe and galaxy were located here, Sauron had the confidence to cut it off. Phew! 3 dazzling sword lights passed through the water prison and struck Mahaba's body. The already broken body was even more injured at this moment. Blood instantly permeated Ajin's water dungeon. Ah, thirsty. The severe pain made Mahabai's open his mouth wide, but in the water prison, he could not make a sound and could only drink a belly full of water created by chakra. At this moment, Monka's cry was heard again from the sky. I don't believe you can escape this time. In the sight of Mahabas, whose consciousness had already become blurred, a bloody black shadow fell from the sky. Monka showed a ferocious smile on his face, considering that Captain Kyle had instructed to leave some people alive. He chose to turn the back of the giant axe downwards. Boom! The terrifying axe strike of level 45 with 110 strength points hit Mabai's head like a mountain. The water prison was instantly crushed by the impact caused by the huge force, and even Ajin was forced to retreat in this impact storm. And looking at Mahabai's, this big shot who was ranked among the most prominent in the New World was beaten without any chance to fight back in the East China Sea by a successive attack from a member of a pirate group who had debuted for less than half a year. In the end, it was Monka's axe strike that put an end to it, completely destroying his remaining consciousness. There was a pop. Mabai's disheveled body fell straight to the ground. Chapter 78. I want to make a deal with you. Mahabasi. The other side. Raoji, who came out of the pit despite the pain in his waist, just happened to see Mabai's being knocked down by Kyle's companions. His face was grim and trembling. The waist that had just been hit continued to send out pain signals from being unable to bear the weight. But the good thing is, the power of the Earth Fist can transform all pain into output power. Seeing Mabai's being knocked down, Laoji knew that even if his body was old, he had to stand up again. Otherwise, how could they, the leaders of the Don Quixote family and subordinates of the 7 warlords of the sea, be defeated by a group of rookie pirates in the East China Sea? But this will make the young master lose face in the underground world. Wow, you defeated the Shichibukai's subordinates so easily. You are worthy of being my partner, you are so awesome. At this moment, a sigh came from behind Laoji, who was not sure whether he was praising someone else or himself, causing him to turn around alertly. At this moment, Raoji's gloomy face and Kyle's smiling face formed a sharp contrast. Kid, I admit that you are different from other pirates in the East China Sea. But... no buts. Boom! Just as Laoji was gathering all his strength and trying to say something polite, Kyle moved directly through space and came behind Laoji. Then, he unethically punched the same place he had just hit. Ah! You... Laoji's eyes were bulging and bloodshot, and it was hard to tell whether it was because of pain or anger. Although he didn't say anything, his murderous look was as if he was asking Kyle why he attacked me. Kyle grinned and took the initiative to answer, "Excuse me, I'm a pirate. Sneak attacks and the like are my specialties." Bump! Little devil, don't go too far. Laoji turned around and punched the air, causing a huge wave of air. Your fist seems a little slow, old man. Kyle teleported again and returned to the front of Laoji, with a slightly teasing expression on his face. As his strength continues to increase, he can now use space movement 50 times in a row when in full condition without affecting his combat status in the slightest. Plus the bug level precognitive skills are super intuitive. It can be said, with the same level of strength, Kyle is invincible. Flames of anger filled Laoji's eyes, but he didn't dare to attack easily at this moment. Since he was not in a hurry, Kyle was naturally even less anxious. The ending of this battle was already written from the beginning. He stretched out his hand and hooked it provocatively. Hey, why don't you attack me? If you don't defeat me soon, my friends will come over here. As he spoke, Kyle pointed to Zoro and the others who were correcting their movements after defeating Mahabas. This statement is of course a lie. A lean camel is bigger than a horse. Moreover, with the strength of the Diang Fist, Laoji can always recover to his best condition. If he wanted to, he was still capable of killing any of Kyle's companions except Zoro and Monka in seconds. Hateful. Laoji's eyes rolled, and he gathered his aura again, and put his hands in front of him, one up and one down. There is no other choice but to use that one trick. That the peerless physical skill that runs through his life. If this trick can't defeat the opponent, then... At this moment, Lao Ji didn't even dare to think further. Now, he concentrated all his attention on mobilizing all the strength in his body and then injected it into his fists. Geez. Seal. Boom. A streak of light rushed towards Kyle like lightning. This is Lao Ji's strongest move, which can increase his speed to the extreme. If this doesn't allow him to defeat the opponent, it seems that his only fate is to leave here. Bump! Lao Ji's figure arrived at Kyle's location at a speed even more terrifying than the Marine Rokushiki's razor. But his face suddenly became ferocious, his mouth opened wide, and his eyeballs bulged outwards. Behind him, Kyle slowly pulled out the fist that had pierced Lao Ji's body, dispersing the wisps of smoke rising above. He reached out and patted Lao Ji on the shoulder. That's enough, old man. You've tried hard enough. You... The old man, who was already a dying candle in the wind, turned his head and wanted to say something else. But in the end, he seemed to have lost his strength, and he suddenly let out a long breath. All the muscles in his body relaxed, like a deflated balloon, and instantly became deflated as before. If it was the young Lao Ji, it would be impossible for Kyle to succeed so easily. At least I should be able to withstand another 10 or 8 punches. Unfortunately for him now, every second he maintains his best condition is equivalent to consuming his remaining life. There was a pop. This powerful martial artist was ultimately defeated by the magic of time and the power of cheating. Looking at Lao Ji, who fell to the ground, Kel immediately raised his eyebrows. 3 punches and the 7 warlords of the sea fell to the ground. I am a male pirate who is good at sneak attacks on enemies and understands human nature. At this moment, Kyle seemed to have found his future fighting style. What could be a better move than super intuition plus spatial movement? Space movement? B-level skill. Rubbish system, what kind of judging criteria are these? This is clearly a god-level skill that is even higher than S-level. Captain Kyle. Seeing that Kyle had also ended the battle, Zoro and others immediately gathered around. By the way, the fallen Mahabas was brought along as well. Well done. Kyle smiled and praised his companion's efforts, then squatted down and reached his hand directly into Mabai's vest. Among a bunch of disgusting chest hair, he soon touched a sleeping special Den Den Mushi. It's really here. Looking at the Den Den Mushi in front of him, Kai immediately smiled knowingly. He immediately dialed the button on the Den Den Mushi. After just a few dozen seconds of waiting, a male voice soon came from the other end of the Den Den Mushi microphone. Hey, what's wrong? Isn't this Doflamingo? Kyle was secretly stunned. Page 84. But he immediately thought that although Mahabas and Lao Ji were also cadres of the Don Quixote family, there were more core cadres above them. Collecting protection fees is just a daily task, and there is naturally no need to directly deal with Doflamingo for such matters. He remembers. Mahabai seems to be Diamante's subordinate. After thinking for a while, Kyle cleared his throat, then picked up the Den Den Mushi and said in a deep voice. Is it the Don Quixote family? I'm Kyle from the East China Sea, and I want to make a deal with you. Okay? Den Den Mushi looked visibly stunned, and soon the voice continued. Who are you? Where are Mabais and the others? Them? Kyle glanced at the 2 people lying unconscious on the ground and smiled. They are fine, but they may die soon. Den Den Mushi fell silent for a moment before it continued to speak. You knocked those 2 idiots down? That's right. Kyle admitted generously. Den Den Mushi remained silent for a moment, then said. What do you want? Well. Kyle smiled and said, I'm sorry, it seems like you can't afford what I want. If possible, can you please hand the phone over to the person who is truly in charge of your family, Lord Doflamingo? I think he will be interested in the deal I mentioned. Den Den Mushi remained silent for a moment, and then a voice that seemed to be suppressing anger came out. You wait. At the same time, the kingdom of Dressrosa far away in the New World. Diamante in the palace suddenly threw the red wine glass in his hand to the ground, allowing the precious red wine to seep down through the cracks in the stone bricks. These two idiots! Diamante cursed inwardly. But thinking of their young master's character who attached great importance to his family, Diamante did not dare to neglect it. He immediately stood up, holding the den mushi, and walked towards the main hall of the castle. Chapter 79 Lord Dover, I am your fan. 2 in 1. Inside the main hall. A man wearing a pink cloak like a flamingo sat on a noble red chair. There was an evil smile on the corner of his mouth. He looked into the distance at the world through the huge empty window of the palace, and from time to time he made a strange laugh. He seemed to be in a very good mood. This person is none other than Doflamingo, one of the 7 warlords of the sea and the head of the Don Quixote family. The family business is booming, the number of toy dolls in the factory is increasing, and wars are becoming more and more frequent. Everything was going as planned according to his plan. It seemed that it would not be long before he could move on to the next step. The smooth planning gave him more time to enjoy himself. However, just then, a man dressed like a sunflower suddenly walked in. Dover, something's wrong. Diamante looked at the den mushi in his hand with a conflicted expression and quickly came to Dover. Okay? The beautiful sunny summer day was interrupted. Dover frowned instantly and looked at Diamante. What happened? Diamante paused, raised the den mushi in front of Doflamingo, and said directly, Lao Ji and his men were defeated in the East China Sea. The other side is now trying to threaten us with their lives. East China Sea? Doflamingo raised his eyebrows uncertainly, as if he was doubting his ears. But Diamante nodded affirmatively. Yes, it's the East China Sea. I heard that it was a famous pirate who appeared over there recently. It should be this guy. Diamante stretched out his hand and threw out a piece of paper that fluttered like a flag. The paper floated in front of Doflamingo and instantly returned to normal, turning into a normal bounty warrant. Kyle's name was clearly written on the top of the bounty. He is the flying man who ate the flying fruit and can make any object he touches fly like a flag. Looking at the contents of the bounty, a look of surprise flashed across Doflamingo's face. A bounty of 3,000 million Bailey? He was able to defeat Lao Ji and his men? Interesting. How dare you blackmail me? A fierce look flashed in the eyes behind the bright red sunglasses. Doflamingo waved his hand and took the microphone of the den mushi directly from Diamante. All of a sudden, the originally sleeping den mushi immediately smiled confidently. Moses. At the same time, in the East China Sea, on Black Gun Island. Seeing that den mushi had a signal again, Kyle immediately smiled and greeted. Excuse me, is the person opposite you the famous Shichibukai Doflamingo-sama? Doflamingo frowned and said in a gloomy voice, It's me. Mahabaizi and the others are in your hands? Just tell me, what do you want? Doflamingo answered the phone without revealing his murderous intent. He knew that would only put the negotiations in a disadvantageous position. He only had so many family members, and each one of them was invaluable. It would be best if he could save their lives through negotiation. As for whether or not to take revenge, that is a matter for the future. But what Doflamingo didn't expect was, he thought that the other side, who had defeated Raoji and Mabai's, 2 cadres of their family, would immediately ask for a huge reward from him. But from the den mushi's side, a voice suddenly came that silenced him. Wow! Is it really Lord Dover? Lord Dover! I'm your fan! A blue vein suddenly popped up on Doflamingo's forehead. For some reason, he felt like he was being played a trick. Fans? Doflamingo sneered, I don't need fans who only mess with me. Ha 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 ha, what are you talking about, sir? Kyle laughed loudly. After all, if I don't make trouble like this, I can't get in touch with you, sir, right? Kid, I don't have time to chat with you. Tell me, what do you want? Doflamingo asked for the second time, with a hint of impatience in his tone. What do you want? Kyle paused for a moment on the den mushi, then put forward his request. Since I have the families of the 2 adults in my hands, I will make 2 requests. First, I hope that the Don Quixote family will give me the management rights of the East China Sea weapons production base. What? Are you kidding me? In the palace, Doflamingo hadn't spoken yet, but Diamante, who was waiting beside him, suddenly lost control of her anger and started to yell. Do you know how big the East China Sea is? Do you know how big the weapons business in the East China Sea is? Boy! Listen to my advice. The East China Sea is huge, you can't control it. I advise you to make some practical requests. It's not that Diamante gets angry easily, but he is afraid that Kelty's demands will be too excessive, which will directly lead to the failure of the negotiations and cause him to lose two capable subordinates. Doflamingo really values family ties. But that is based on the condition that it does not affect the overall interests of the family. Once his ambition to achieve his ultimate goal is affected, the family members will be nothing more than pawns that can be thrown away with tears in Doflamingo's eyes. Although they would be happy to sacrifice themselves to accomplish the young master's goal. We have to admit that Doflamingo is really charming as a hero and a leader. But the arms business all over the world is the result of decades of hard work by the Don Quixote family. The value of two family cadres is obviously not as great as the weapons management rights in an area as large as the East China Sea. Even Doflamingo frowned after hearing this. Although he could agree to the conditions and then go back on his word, he didn't think that Kyle on the other side of the Den Mushi was an idiot who wouldn't think of this. Be quiet, Diamante. Doflamingo suddenly spoke, then took a deep breath, picked up the microphone again and said, I can't agree to your conditions. Change it. Wait a minute, Lord Dover. I think you've got it wrong. Kyle suddenly interrupted the other party and said with a smile, I don't want to take away your weapons business rights in the East China Sea. You can still sell weapons in the East China Sea to those pirates and rebels. You can even build new weapons production bases. All I want are the 3 existing weapons production bases, that's all. Just 3 weapons production bases? Doflamingo and Diamante in the Dressrosa Palace were suddenly stunned. What's the use of having only 3 factories? Without the huge sales of the Don Quixote family, the weapons from the 3 factories would be nothing more than scrap metal piled up in the warehouse waiting to mold. Could it be that the guy opposite is organizing a large-scale war and is in urgent need of weapons? Page 85. Doflamingo narrowed his eyes slightly. If that's the case, I can accept this condition. Although he had no idea what Kyle was up to, he still agreed to his terms. He has many weapons production bases in other areas, and the 3 in the East China Sea were not factories directly owned by him. He just collected some protection money and used his privileges as a shichibukai to reduce some of the Navy's troubles. Although those 3 islands can also reduce some of his transportation costs. But it is still acceptable to exchange this price for 2 family cadres. That's great. As expected of Lord Dover, you have such a broad mind. Kyle's eyes suddenly lit up. However, Doflamingo on Den Mushi's side seemed not to have heard Kyle's flattery and immediately asked. So, what is your second condition? He. Kyle grinned, this condition is very simple for you. I think Lord Dover will definitely agree to it. My second condition is, let me join the Don Quixote family. What? In the New World, Doflamingo, who was in the palace, was stunned for a moment. But the next moment, he suddenly leaned back and let out his signature laugh. Ba-aya. It's so fun. You defeated 2 of my officers, and now you want to join us? Tell me, why do you want to join my family, and why should I let you, who blackmailed me, join the family? It's simple. Kyle replied, because Lord Dover is one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The Shichibukai are the most privileged class among pirates besides the 4 emperors. I don't think there is a single pirate who doesn't want to be one of the Shichibukai. I want the privileges of being a Shichibukai, but as someone who was born in the weakest sea, I also have this self-awareness. I know that not everyone can become a Shichibukai. So, I thought of you, Lord Dover. Besides, Kyle narrowed his eyes and grinned. Your family probably doesn't have any ships that can sail in the calm belt, right? A windless zone? Doflamingo suddenly became interested. Could it be that? Yes. That's what I mean. Kyle's taste. One of my subordinates is a user of the storm fruit. We can sail freely even in areas where ordinary sailboats cannot sail. At the same time, we also possess sufficient strength, and ordinary sea kings pose no threat to us. And our ships are large enough to definitely meet general transportation needs. When the time comes, if you have any missions for transportation between the Grand Line and the Four Seas, I can help you fulfill them. The user of the storm fruit? That fruit is actually in your hand? Doflamingo tapped the table, looking thoughtful, but the slowly rising corners of his mouth inadvertently betrayed his thoughts. As we all know, the calm belt in the pirate world has always been an area coveted by all forces but also a headache. So far, apart from the departments of the world government and the shipping king Umit, few people have the ability to transport in the calm belt. Even Doflamingo, if he wanted to trade between the Grand Line and the Four Seas, had to follow the routes of these two forces. If the goods are shady and you don't want people to find out, you can spend a lot of money and ask the shipping company to help transport them. As for the wider ones that can withstand inspection, they are transported from the Red Earth continent using the power of the 7 warlords of the sea. But, regardless of which of the two modes of transportation is used, the transportation cost brought to the Don Quixote family every year is a huge sum. Although Kyle only has one ship, it certainly cannot solve the Don Quixote family's global industrial transportation problem. But often the most difficult step is from 0 to 1. The doldrums where no one cares about things also contain endless business opportunities. That was an area that he had never been able to enter. Thousands of thoughts flashed quickly through Doflamingo's mind. He saw nothing wrong with Kyle wanting the privileges of a shichibukai. As a sinister laugh sounded, the Den Mushi of Diamante, who had a sunflower on her head, suddenly spoke Doflamingo's voice again. Okay. Kyle from the East Sea, right? I agree to your deal. Let Lao Ji and Mabais return to the New World safely. The 3 weapons production bases will be your gift for joining the Don Quixote family. From today on, you can sail on the sea with my flag on your back. Likewise, I will also declare to the outside world that you are mine. In that case, thank you very much, Lord Dover. Kyle laughed heartily. After hanging up the phone with Doflamingo, he immediately turned to Dashigi and said, Dashigi, did you hear what was said on the phone? Hurry up and give the 2 senior cadres proper treatment. From now on, we are a loving family. This? Dashigi, who had heard the entire conversation clearly, looked puzzled. As Kyle requested, she used Hui Dao to treat Mabais and the other 2, and puffed up her cheeks as she asked. Captain Kyle, why should we join the Don Quixote family? They have provoked so many wars in the East China Sea and sold weapons to pirates. It's obvious that they are not good people. They, the Dusk Pirates, founded the Stormwitch Church to save civilians, and sent weapons to the civilians bullied by pirates. Now we have even acquired a base for producing weapons. Dashigi really didn't understand why Kyle wanted to hang out with those bad guys. But Kyle smiled and replied, It is precisely because they are not good people that we should join them. Dashigi, have you forgotten my identity as the captain? The captain's identity? Dashigi was stunned for a moment, then quickly came to her senses. By the way, the captain is. Dashigi suddenly stopped talking. She looked towards the black flame father and daughter standing with Koro. She didn't dare to speak loudly anymore, but silently chanted in her heart. Correct. The captain's true identity is the marshal's personal agent. As an agent, Captain Kyle has no use for just being a household name pirate. After all, they don't care about those false reputations. But if you become a member of the 7 warlords of the sea, the situation will be different. Although they have just joined, there will definitely be some distrust between the two sides. But as long as they can gain Doflamingo's trust, it means they have obtained the information and movements of the Don Quixote family. By then, all the pirates who come to them to buy weapons will be under the control of Captain Kyle. He is worthy of being the agent chosen by the Marshal. It can do things I never thought of. Perhaps when Captain Kyle saw these two Don Quixote family cadres, he had already thought of the follow-up plan. Really? Dashigi, you still have a long way to go. Kyle smiled slightly. He saw that the other companions who had wanted to ask something began to fall into deep thought after hearing the conversation between him and Dashigi. He walked up to Hyan and his daughter. Did you all hear the conversation just now? Kyle asked Blackheart, the man in charge of Black Gun Island, with a kind smile on his face. I heard it. I heard it. Heishin immediately showed an even more flattering expression than before when facing Mabai's and the other man, and nodded and bowed to Kyle. Joke. Before, he just thought that these big forces just had stronger weapons and more soldiers. But after watching a battle between powerful men up close, he has a new understanding of the world. How could he miss such a wonderful conversation? This is a phone call that is enough to change the world in the East China Sea. Glad to hear you. Kyle smiled. Then, from today on, immediately stop all external sales of the weapons production base. All weapons produced on this island will be sent to me to arrange their destination. Do you understand? I know. I know. Cold sweat broke out on Heishin's forehead. Although he didn't know what Kyle was planning, he was too frightened to show any intention of denying it. Under his horrified gaze, Kyle suddenly took a step forward, patted his shoulder with his hand, and revealed an intriguing smile. Do it well and I won't treat you badly. Nami, notify Nokigo and ask her to lead people to build the main church of the Stormwitch Church in the East China Sea region here. By the way, ask her to inform Smoker that there are many pirates here and a lot of business, and ask him to come quickly. Okay, Captain Kyle. Nami responded sweetly, then immediately ran to the corner and used the power of faith to start communicating with Nojigo. After finishing his business, Kyle turned his attention again and focused on the girl Hyan. He finally met a talented person who could draw weapon blueprints, so of course he would not let go of the beautiful girl in front of him. I just wonder if that massive battle just now has affected her desire to become a pirate. Chapter 80-20 Consecutive Draws Sexy Prisoner, continued 2-in-1. It turned out that Kyle was completely overthinking. It is completely different from the black heart that was once fearful after seeing the disparity in the world. When Kyle asked the girl again if she was ready to join their pirate group, what he got was a pair of expectant eyes that sparkled like gemstones, and the girl nodded in agreement with her twin ponytails shaking. Page 86. I never thought I would be able to join such a powerful pirate group. This is really so cool. The girl jumped up and down excitedly, completely ignoring the worried look on her old father's face. But if her daughter must go out to sea as a seafarer, joining Kyle and the others seems to be the best option at the moment. At night, the stars fall. Under Heishin's introduction, the Tiga sailed into the dedicated port inside the Black Gun Island, avoiding the sight of ordinary pirates. Kyle did not let Blackheart expel the pirates from Black Gun Island because it would not be long before Smoker would arrive here with his navy warships. By the time, no matter how many pirates there are on this island, they must all be brought to justice. Any evil will eventually be brought to justice. As usual, after Hyan got on board, Chloe once again prepared a large table of delicious food. This cheerful girl who was very good at reading people's expressions quickly won everyone's favor and blended in with them. Kyle and his companions enjoyed a delicious meal and drank to their heart's content in the high-end cabin restaurant. In the next few days, Kyle planned to stay on Black Gun Island for a while, waiting for Meili from the Stormwitch Chamber of Commerce to come over, connect with Blackheart, and discuss subsequent shipments and logistics issues. In the afternoon, with the introduction of Heishin, he had a phone call with the leaders of the other two islands with weapons production bases, and told the two weapons production bases how to deal with the matter that he had instructed Heishin to do. Although they were somewhat skeptical about the sudden change of a new owner, the two men knew the general situation well and did not dare to act rashly. They planned to wait for Kyle to arrive at their place before finding out the details. Silent all night. At night, looking out the window at the clear sky with sparse moon and stars. After a night of fun, Kyle returned to his captain's room. Along with it, there was also a metal box filled with 15 billion Baileys in cash. Hey hey hey. Looking at the metal boxes filling up the entire desk, Kyle's face immediately revealed a simple and honest smile. When negotiating with Doflamingo, he deliberately did not mention the matter of the 15 billion belly. He didn't mention it, and Dover didn't ask for it. How does the saying go? Not saying anything means tacit consent. Now these 15 billion Baileys have become his private property. In order to prevent any further complications, Kyle plans to spend all the 15 billion Baileys tonight. By then, even if Raoji and Mabais wake up, he will be penniless and have no evidence. Bring it on! Kyle rubbed his hands together excitedly. Tonight, let's fight to our heart's content. With a thought, the interface of the Gashapon lottery appeared directly in Kyle's mind. He now has a total of 22.5 billion Baileys in his hands. Kyle plans to take advantage of today's good luck and spend 20 billion Baileys before midnight. System. Your financial sponsor is here. Because he was very satisfied with his previous gains from the legendary Gasopon machine, this time Kyle decided to spend all 20 billion Baileys on the legendary Gasopon machine, and by the way, test the probability of the legendary Gasopon machine's delivery. As Kyle pressed the button of the Gasopon machine a little harder, in an instant, more than half of the metal box on his desk was empty. Legendary Gashapon machine, 10 consecutive draws. Give it to me. Brushing, brushing, brushing. The next moment, a series of system prompt pop-up windows popped up in front of Kyle. Congratulations on obtaining the C-rank item Shallow Hit. Congratulations on getting the C-rank item Capsule Helicopter. Congratulations on obtaining the C-rank item Habari Kyoya's Spare Ring. Congratulations on obtaining the A-level item Awakening Stone. Congratulations on obtaining the C-level item Magic Card Fireball. Congratulations on obtaining the B-level item character card Black Rock Shooter. Sure enough, without the protection for novices, even B-rank items are hard to come by. Looking at the results of the first round of 10 draws, Kyle's face immediately showed an expression of as expected. Legendary Gashapon machine, the guaranteed minimum is C grade. In this 10-pull series, I got 1 A-level, 1 B-level, and 8 C-level items. I can't say they are good, but I can't say they are bad either. This is probably the normal delivery probability of the Gasopon machine. But, looking at the last message in the system pop-up window, Kyle's mouth corners suddenly raised, revealing a satisfied smile. Although there was no S-level prize, there was a B-level character card and the last awakening stone needed for Dashigi's awakening. I feel like my luck today is pretty good. Kyle opened his backpack with relief, and his eyes immediately focused on the portrait of the last character card. This is a thin girl with blue light like flames in her eyes, and 2 black ponytails of different lengths floating in the air nimbly. The girl only had an open black cape on her body, which generously revealed her A-neck wrapped in black underwear. Black Rock Shooter. I was saying that when I saw Black Flame, I always had a strong sense of déjà vu. So it was waiting for me here? Feeling the will of the universe, Kyle immediately understood. This character card is obviously prepared for his new crew member, the girl Hei Yen. This outfit, this hairstyle, this figure. This character card of Black Rock Shooter is tailor-made for the girl Black Flame. Kyle was sure that she could definitely contract this character card right now. In this way, Main's character card can only be postponed and wait for other destined people. Number of tools +1. Kyle smiled knowingly and focused his attention on the information of several other C-level items. I don't know if it's because the prize pool for the legendary level Gasopon machine is a little richer, but this time, none of the 8 C-level prizes are the same. First, the familiar old friend, the C-level weapon Shallow Hit. Needless to say, the upgraded version of the Nichiren sword, the consolation prize of the C-rank prize pool. Kyle estimated that after he drew a few more high-level gachas, there would soon be a bunch of these things in his equipment room. In addition to the Shallow Strike, there are 3 more items that can be used as weapons this time. The first one is the Kusanagi sword from Naruto. Kyle thought about it, and a long sword with a very ancient appearance suddenly appeared in front of him. The hilt is made of a medium brown material that looks aged, and there is a Magatama shape at the junction of the hilt and the blade. Kusagi sword. Type, weapon. Grade, C. Introduction. Made of the hardest material in the Naruto world, it can be freely extended and retracted after injecting energy, with the longest extension distance being 100 meters. A sword that can be extended freely? If it were not a sharp long sword but a blunt weapon, it would probably be able to be sold at a good price to those noble women. It's a pity. I'll ask Zoro later if he's interested in changing his sword. Made of the hardest material in the Naruto world, the quality of this sword should be comparable to that of a large sharp sword, right? Putting away the pheasant sword, Kyle turned his attention to the next weapon and immediately summoned it. This is a large fan that is as tall as a person. Samsung fan. Type, weapon. Grade, C. Introduction. From the Naruto world, this is a huge folding fan made of wind attribute material. After injecting energy, it can generate strong winds to perform a knife-like attack. The Naruto world again? 3-star fan? This looks like the big fan Temari used in Naruto, right? I don't know if Nami can use this wind attribute item. Kyle looked up and down at the 3-star fan in front of him. So far, he has not pulled out any weapons suitable for Nami. If she doesn't mind, you can let her use this 3-star fan to deal with it first. After all, this is a wind attribute item. Putting away the 3-star fan, Kyle summoned his last weapon again. This time, what appeared was a metal ring that was well made but had no apparent secrets. Hibari Kyoya's spare ring. Type, weapon. Grade, C. Introduction. From the Tutor world. It can transform one's own will into the flame of enlightenment, increasing one's own strength. It can also be used with box weapons. P.S. If the will is too strong, it may break. Hibari Kyoya's spare ring? Is it the disposable ring that is often broken by his strong will? Kyle raised the ring in his hand and placed it under the moonlight, recalling the anime plot about this prop in his mind. As you can see from the introduction, this is a relatively versatile weapon with almost no special requirements. And can it be used with box weapons? So, I can draw box weapons from the prize pool in the future? The box weapon is a combat item in the game Tutor. It can store weapons, energy, combat pets or various other things in a box that is similar to a pokeball, but in a square shape. The way to use it is to open the weapon box through the power of enlightenment corresponding to the attributes on the ring. It is a very convenient fighting tool. However, no matter how convenient it has nothing to do with Kyle, because he doesn't even have a box weapon to deal with garbage. After closing the introduction panel of the spare ring, Kyle once again turned his attention to the remaining sea-level items. Among them are the fragments of the Four Souls Jade, the capsule helicopter, the invisibility cloak, and the magic card, Fireball. Page 87. The fragments of the Four Souls Jade are a kind of prop that can improve the qualifications of non-human creatures and increase their strength. The capsule helicopter, like the capsule motorcycle, is a capsule-sized device that can summon a helicopter out of thin air. The invisibility cloak works just as its name suggests, it can hide your body after putting it on. Looking at the three props, Kyle's mind suddenly became active. A fragment of the Four Souls Jade, an item from the Inuyasha world? It can improve the aptitude of non-human creatures. After I receive a suitable partner with a pokeball, I can give it a try. It's very cost-effective. The capsule helicopter, well, it's a decent tool for traveling on land. The invisibility cloak seems to be very useful, but also seems to be very useless. Almost every strong person in the pirate world must have observation haki. If you just hide your body, you will still be caught. Sure enough, it's just a useless prop? After reviewing the three items one by one, Kyle looked at the last item in the Tendra series. Magic card, Fireball. Type, props. Grade, C. Introduction, must be used with the dual disc. Consumes a certain amount of physical energy, summons a fireball, and attacks the enemy. Use it with the dual disc? Isn't this something from Yu-Gi-Oh? Can this be used in battle? Looking at the introduction information of the magic card Fireball, Kyle, who originally thought it was a disposable item, suddenly had a gleam of anticipation in his eyes. playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the world of pirates seems quite interesting. I just don't know when I can take out this dual disc system. You're making it very difficult for me. After closing all the information interfaces, Kyle took one last look at the harvest from his 10 consecutive draws and then opened the Gashapon interface again. Then, for the last 10 consecutive draws, grant me strength. After shouting in his heart, Kyle once again clicked on the 10 pull button of the legendary Gashapon machine. All of a sudden, another series of pop-up prompts flashed before his eyes. Congratulations on getting the C-level item Capsule House. Congratulations on obtaining the C-level prop character card Peacock Dance. Congratulations on obtaining the C-rank item monster card Condor Girl 1. Congratulations on obtaining the C-rank item Dual Disc. Great! It's the Dual Disc. Seeing the flashing prompt message, Kai immediately shouted in his heart, System Justice. But next second. Congratulations on obtaining the B-level prop character card Sexy Prisoner. Yeah. It's a character, huh? What? Sexy Prisoner. Holy crap. Watching the last message slowly fade away and finally disappear from sight, Kyle, who was originally confident in the second 10 draw, fell silent in an instant. Sexy Prisoner? No, it's really that, right? He opened his backpack tremblingly and looked at the newly appeared character card. He suddenly felt unwell. At this moment, Kyle felt that his backpack system had been mysteriously contaminated, which was unbearable. When he clicked on the character card, he saw a guy wearing a black and white striped prison uniform, but with extremely strong pectoral muscles and body, posing strangely towards him. You can't go wrong. Looking at Kyle's many years of film watching experience, the only person who could grow up to be like this and have this name is the one in his memory. Sexy Prisoner, an S-class hero from the world of One Punch Man. The S rank in the One Punch Man world is only at the B rank level in the system's evaluation. This seems bizarre and outrageous, but it also makes sense. There's nothing we can do about it, since One Punch Man is such an abstract world. Although there is a teacher named Saitama who can shatter stars with one punch, the ones who are really active in the public eye are a group of S-class heroes who can't even give the earth a middle-parted hairstyle. After quickly browsing the character card of the Sexy Prisoner, Kyle quickly clicked on the character cards of Mine and Mosquito Girl to wash his eyes in order to ensure that his eyes were clean. Soon, he took the time to check the other gains from this round of 10 consecutive harvests. Although this time's 10 consecutive legendary gacha did not give Kyle an A-level prize, it did give him 3 B-level items. Among them, the B-level character card Sexy Prisoner is needless to say. Although this character doesn't look that good, a B-level character card is as precious as an A-level item. As for the other 2 B-level items, they are the Black Rock Cannon and the Cyan Battlesuit. Kyle first looked at the Black Rock Cannon. Needless to say, just by looking at the name, you can tell that this must be the corresponding weapon that appeared in combination with the previous character card Black Rock Shooter. Everything is destined. Black Rock Cannon. Type, Weapon. Grade, B. Introduction. Under normal circumstances, this is a Black Rock Cannon that can fire 20 rounds of rock per second, but as the user's knowledge of firearms increases, it can also be freely transformed into a firearm form. The specific effect depends on the user's knowledge. Chapter 81 Dragon Slayer Magic, 2-in-1. A firearm that can change its form freely? The upper limit depends on the user's mastery of firearms knowledge? This is really a weapon suitable for Black Flame. Thinking back to the Black Flame girl's self-introduction during the day, Kyle couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. The next moment, he thought about it, and a long cannon that was completely black but engraved with glowing orchid patterns suddenly appeared in his hands. Kyle's arms dropped down, a look of admiration in his eyes. As expected of a giant cannon. With this amount of weight, just carrying it on your back can be considered weight training, right? I guess it's unlikely that the Black Flame girl will be able to use this weapon before she reaches level 20. It's just in time to hand over the character template and this weapon to Black Flame tomorrow morning. Load early, level up early, a tool person should act like a tool person. Smiling as he put away the Black Rock Cannon, Kyle turned his gaze to the last B-level prize, the Cyan Battlesuit. This costume, as the name suggests, is another classic among classics. Without even looking at the miniature version of it, Kyle could imagine how it would look on him. With a thought, he directly clicked on the introduction panel of the combat suit. Cyan Battle Suit. Type, Props. Grade, B. Introduction: this combat suit comes from the world of Dragon Ball. It is comfortable, has super strong protection, and is equipped with cosmic technology. It is specially designed for combat. Sure enough, this is another combat uniform that focuses on defense. The introduction of the system did not surprise Kyle. After all, apart from defense, this thing really did not have any fancy effects. Throw it into the equipment room and whoever likes it can take it. Kyle turned his eyes and looked at the other sea-level rewards again. The first thing to be affected was naturally the character card that he cared about the most. Sea-level character card Peacock Dance. Although it was just a sea-level character card, the very sensible system still showed Kyle a portrait of an attractive blonde girl. Her lively eyes sparkled with stars, and she blinked forward playfully, with her slender fingers pressing on her tender red lips, looking gorgeous and charming. She had a tall figure like a model, but she used a cute posture to slightly delicately lift up her proud and rounded features, almost breaking the seal of the white shirt. Sure enough, the system has never disappointed me when it comes to the portraits of female character cards. Kyle slurped his saliva, looked away awkwardly, and started to think about business. Although the memory is a bit long ago, he still remembers that Peacock Dance should be an important supporting character in the first part of the anime Yu-Gi-Oh! So, the ability of this character card is to use the dual disc and various cards to fight? Kyle looked at the other prizes lying in the system. It seemed that the system deliberately matched it. In the second round of draws, 3 monster cards were directly given to Kyle, namely Condor Girl 123, which corresponded to the main card group of Peacock Dance in the anime. The effects of these 3 monster cards are similar to the previous magic cards. It requires carrying a dual disc, which consumes the user's physical and mental energy to summon the monsters on the cards to fight. Interesting, is this a summoner-style power system? It's a pity. It would be great if we could get the president and Baijia out. Maybe I can even be a dragon rider. Kyle raised the corners of his mouth and muttered to himself, then he realized something and looked at the next prop. Dual plate. Category, Weapons. Grade, C. Introduction: a dual disc from the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! It can be used with cards to stimulate the dual power in the user. It can only be used by certain characters. Is it limited to certain people? Look at the special introduction on the dual disc. Needless to say, this is another weapon, like Dashigi's Zanpakutō, that requires the character to have certain special abilities to equip it. The condition for using Zanpakutō is spiritual power, so the condition for using the dual disc should be something called the power of duel. Sure enough, these card players in the anime seem to be playing cards, but they are actually competing with each other in terms of their own strength. That would make sense for Yugi and the others printing cards anytime, anywhere. After a teasing sigh, Kyle looked at the Peacock Dancer's character card again. Peacock Dance, it seems that there is nothing special about it except that it is beautiful. Given her physical fitness as an ordinary person, it should be easy to choose a suitable person for her. Kyle muttered to himself, hoping that this character card could find a compatible person as soon as possible, and looked at the last 2 sea-level items. One is a capsule house, which also comes from the Dragon Ball world. It can create a house with complete facilities out of thin air. It is a must-have prop for outdoor activities. The other item is a potion item that seems to come from an unknown game or animation, Red Potion. Its effect is also very simple and crude. It can heal physical injuries and restore a large amount of vitality. Although I don't know the specific effect, since it can be rated as C, I believe the effect must not be too bad. Seeing the introduction of the Red Potion, Kyle immediately rubbed his chin and thought to himself. Restore a large amount of vitality? I wonder if this thing will work on an old man like Whitebeard who is full of hidden injuries. Page 88. If it can really make Whitebeard's health better, his stupid sons should be willing to pay a high price for this red potion, right? It's a pity that I only got 1 bottle, otherwise I could find someone to test the effect. In order to solidify his useful identity as a spy, Kyle will not give up any opportunity to build a closer relationship with the Four Emperors pirate group. After sorting all the props into categories, Kyle closed the backpack interface. So far, he spent all the 20 billion Baileys without a single cent left. However, his turn is not over yet. Because just now, when he was doing the second round of lottery, a warm current suddenly surged in his body, nourishing all the cells and soul in his body. Of course, Kyle knew why all this happened. Because at this moment, he has successfully upgraded to become a level 5 captain. Captain Kyle. Level 5. Experience value 625/5000. Total combat power 88,794. Skills: Super Intuition, A. Special Kill, Serious Punch, S. Moon Reading, A. Space Movement, B. Waiting to be Drawn. The strength has increased again. Kyle clenched his fists, feeling the power he gained in an instant, and his heart suddenly surged. At this rate of increase, he might be able to break Luffy's record and, at a faster rate, possess the combat power to defeat the Four Emperors. However, Kyle quickly shook off the joy of the surge in power and calmed down. Because he knew very well that if he wanted to obtain a large amount of funds next time, it would not be as easy as before. After 3 months of hard work, he had almost plucked all the wool he knew about in the East China Sea. As for the gun business, since it is aimed at working people, the price of weapons is lowered. It is impossible for him to get dividends of 10 billion or 20 billion in just 2 or 3 months like before. So next, he has to change the map to develop. Currently, Kyle has 2 places in mind. One is the West Sea where the Mafia civilization flourishes, and the other is the Great Sea Route located at the center of the world stage. Kyle knew very well that the reason why he was able to obtain a large amount of Bailey in the East China Sea and quickly upgrade was, on the one hand, due to his understanding of the plot, and on the other hand, this is because the East China Sea is truly the weakest sea, and there is almost nothing that can stop its growth. However, among the other seas, the North Sea is the most powerful of the 4 seas, and it also has world-class top forces such as Germa 66. Kyle would definitely not seek trouble by going there to compete with others for money before he has fully grown. As for the South China Sea, because he knew too little information, he couldn't think of any good projects that could make money quickly. After much thought, Kyle's only options for the future are the West Sea and the Grand Line. The reason why he chose the West Sea is that there are mafia gangs everywhere, and Kyle can eliminate the gangs and take the mafia funds for himself. Considering that Capone Becky had already unified the underground mafia in the West Sea before he became a supernova. Presumably, among the strong men there, not many would be a match for the Dusk Pirates. As for the Grand Line, there is no need to say much. Since the plot has not yet fully begun, Kyle can take advantage of his ability to predict the future and participate in many events. For example, the current drought in the Kingdom of Alabasta has only lasted for a year, and the treasury has not been depleted in advance due to drought relief. Kyle can inform King Cobra of Alabasta of Crocodile's trick and take the opportunity to make a deal. Crocodile's Baroque works, both its assets and talents, are coveted by Kyle. There is also the King of the Drum Kingdom, the one who possesses the ability to swallow the swallow fruit. Kyle remembered that in the comics, that guy later used the power of the fruit to synthesize a special metal and made a huge fortune. It's really a waste of God's gifts for a guy like this to sit on the throne and indulge in enjoyment. It would be better to join his pirate group, work like a slave for him and realize your own value. And the 7 water cities? Although as a member of the Navy, it is not the right time for Kyle to take the initiative to make trouble for the world government. But if he could get Mayor Iceberg to trust him, it shouldn't be a problem for him to ask for a price of at least 9 billion Baileys just for the information about the CP-10 agent. Of course. The gold of Sky Island is also a wealth that you absolutely cannot miss. Although Enel's strength should not be underestimated. He was able to destroy an island, and if he could unleash his full power, he would at least be a top-ranked Shichibukai. Without the aura of the protagonist, Kyle really didn't dare to cause trouble for him. But once they can defeat Enel, all the gold on the Ark's Proverbs and the Golden Bell will be in their pockets. Even if we take into account that selling a large amount of gold may lead to a depreciation of gold, it is definitely a fortune that cannot be refused. It seems that the Grand Line is indeed a more profitable place. No wonder so many pirates are determined to get into the Grand Line regardless of life or death. It's decided. After we settle the matter in the East China Sea, we will set off immediately for the Grand Line. Knowing the future is my greatest weapon. The more Kyle thought about it, the more determined his eyes became. In the end, he directly abandoned the West Sea option and finalized the subsequent itinerary of the Dusk Pirates. Well, before entering the Grand Line, let me see what new moves the system has prepared for me. With determination in his heart, Kyle's mind instantly clicked on the words to be drawn. In an instant, the familiar lottery wheel appeared in his mind and then spun rapidly. After several minutes of torturous waiting, the disc slowly came to a stop. Immediately, a blonde, muscular man appeared in front of Kyle. The man was wearing a sky blue vest, revealing his 8-pack abs, and there was a strange symbol on his arm. Who is this guy? Seeing the character portrait in front of him, Kyle showed a rare look of surprise. At the same time, he was thinking quickly in his mind. At this moment, a familiar yet strange feeling kept surging into his heart. But after thinking for a long time, Kyle still couldn't remember the identity of the man in front of him. Then he didn't think too much about it. He turned his eyes and clicked on the pop-up window that popped up with the blonde man. Congratulations on obtaining the A-level skill, White Dragon Slayer Magic. Dragon Slayer Magic? Is this guy from Fairy Tail? Kyle's eyes lit up as he suddenly realized what was going on. Although he still couldn't remember the name of the man in front of him, the images buried deep in his memory began to slowly surge in his mind. White Dragon Slayer Magic. If he remembered correctly, the so-called white actually means light. This seems to be a kind of light-attributed dragon-killing magic. Extend your palm. A bright and dazzling white light suddenly appeared in Kyle's palm. It's true. It's a light-attributed dragon-slaying magic. Kyle was so excited that he stood up directly from the captain's chair and looked at the light in his palm with excitement. I didn't expect that after all this time, I would finally have a skill that I can use in normal combat. I can be considered as a disciple of my second uncle. White Dragon Slayer Magic, although it is just a skill, it gives Kyle a complete set of light attribute Dragon Slayer magic applications. As long as he is given some time to train, it won't be long before he can learn those well-known dragon-slaying magics. For example, the roar of the white dragon, the claws of the white dragon, the sacred wing attack of the white dragon. Although he couldn't remember the White Dragon Slayer mage's moves, he was familiar with some of Natsu's moves. Anyway, it's all the same set of formulas, just plug them in. It seems that starting from tomorrow, I will also become a member of the training room. That's great. I'll take this opportunity to work hard and practice armament hockey before leaving for the Grand Line. As Kyle's basic physical fitness and mental strength are getting stronger and stronger, skills like two-color hockey and 6 styles of the Navy are no longer considered advanced skills to him. It's just a matter of time to master it. Kyle has seen that a bright future is beckoning him. After a few years, he will be able to rub a nuclear bomb with his hands and directly threaten the world government to transfer money to his system. Chapter 82, The Beginning, Sodi Shirayuki, 2-in-1. Silent all night. The next morning, Kyle first put the pile of miscellaneous items he won from the lottery into the equipment room. After walking out of the cabin, he happened to meet the smart girl Hei Yen, who was full of energy due to the crew dormitory buff and got up to breathe fresh air. Good morning, Hyen. Kyle greeted with a smile. Originally, he was thinking of asking little Tiga to help him call, but he didn't expect to meet him by chance. In that case, he could take this opportunity to use the Black Rock Shooter character card. Captain, good morning. Hearing Kyle's voice, Hei Yen immediately turned around, and her little head with twin ponytails tilted slightly, responding to Kyle happily. At the same time, Kyle had already checked the compatibility of the Black Flame and Black Rock Shooter character cards in his mind. Compatibility equals 90%. This is the most compatible combination Kyle has ever seen. Without saying a word, Kyle quickly walked to the girl's side, and under Hei Yen's curious gaze, he directly loaded the character card onto her. By the way, he also gave her the Black Rock cannon equipment that matched the character card. Just like that, this girl who had just joined the Dusk Pirates was immediately brought into a whole new world before she had time to recover from the shock of this huge ship with ship spirits and the magical room. All of a sudden, she seemed to have experienced countless battles and instantly became a seasoned warrior, gaining experience in fighting against countless strange monsters. The huge cannon that suddenly appeared in her hand became her closest and most trusted partner. This feeling was both dreamy and real, making it difficult for her to tell which side was reality. Captain Kyle, I. Page 89. Hyen opened her mouth in a daze, unable to comprehend the current situation, and was about to say something. But Kyle smiled mysteriously, stretched out his hand to stop her from speaking, and then displayed the Riddler characteristics exclusive to the superior. If you want to know more, go to the training room and ask Dashigi. She will tell you everything. Partner, Black Flame, Black Rock Shooter. Qualification, B. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 34. Total qualification, 340. Strength qualification, 80. Physical qualification, 60. Agility qualification, 100. Spiritual qualification, 100. With the B-level weapons loaded, has the total aptitude reached 340? Inside the restaurant of the Tiga, Kyle sat at a simple single table, enjoying the breakfast prepared by CLO while clicking on the attribute panel of his new partner to check it out. According to the setting that B-level weapons increase 40 points of qualification, the original qualification of this Black Rock Girl's character card should be 300 points. No more, no less. However, for the Dusk Pirates at this time, Black Flame's combat effectiveness is actually not important. Her value lies in her talent for gun making. I wonder what kind of weapon she can create after combining it with Black Rock Shooter's experience in gunfighting. It would be amazing if we could replicate the Black Rock cannon. Kyle stirred the pasta in front of him vigorously with anticipation, so that the sauce could evenly coat each noodle. He didn't expect Black Flame to be able to create a divine weapon comparable to the system items. But as long as we can achieve some of its effects, such as firing 10 shells per second, or even 5 shells per second. At that time, let Usopp mass-produce some special ammunition. The strength of this weapon system will definitely set a new height in the history of the pirate world. Kyle's eyes sparkled, as if he had already seen the people of the Four Seas in the future, each holding a huge cannon engraved with the logo of their pirate group, waiting at the ports of islands or towns, staring the pirate group so much that they dared not get close at all. Far above the sky, he was in the flying Tiga, enjoying the joy of being knocked unconscious by Pele. What an exciting future! With a sigh in his heart, Kyle turned off the system in his mind. He quickly finished his breakfast, then left the restaurant and walked towards the training room. As soon as I walked into the training room, a strong aura hit me in the face. Not surprisingly, except for the cook Kuro, several members of the Dusk Pirates have already been training here for a long time. These guys. Kyle opened the system and looked at the time in his mind. 7:45. I've already woken up so early, how can you guys be so stubborn? With a pleased smile on his face, Kyle stepped into the training room. Today's training rooms, after being upgraded, have become incredibly large. Even if more than a dozen people practice at the same time, they will not interfere with each other. Kyle came here today to test the power of his new skills, and to seize the time to practice his armament hockey. But before that... Daisai Chi! Kyle suddenly stretched out his hand and stopped Dashigi, who was chopping the Iron Man in front of him with a wooden sword. It can be seen that during the time he was eating breakfast, she should have told Heian about how to become stronger through cultivation. Now, the new girl has gone to the shooting range in the training room alone to practice shooting with her cannon. What is it, Captain? The sweaty, beautiful swordsman stopped what she was doing, her bright eyes flashed, and she cast a curious look at Kyle. It's a good thing. Kyle came in front of Dashigi and looked at the Zanpakutō that Dashigi always carried with her and never took off even during training. He smiled slightly. Are you used to using this Zanpakutō? Ah. Dashigi was stunned for a moment, then nodded in a silly way. Get used to it, get used to it. What's wrong, Captain Kyle? Nothing. Kyle shook his head slightly and smiled. I just think it's time for you to see the next form of my Zanpakutō. As he spoke, Kyle woke up the system in his mind and went directly to the partner interface. When his consciousness looked at Dashigi's panel again, the originally dim and unselectable awakening was now emitting a bright glow. Without any hesitation, Kyle clicked on the awakening button with his mind. All of a sudden, Dashigi, who was originally looking at Kyle curiously, suddenly became dazed. There was a flash of light before my eyes. She instantly came to a world of ice and snow. Here it is. Dashigi was stunned. But at this moment, a long-haired lady wearing a white kimono suddenly appeared in front of her. Without waiting for Dashigi to speak, the royal sister with long hair as pure as ice and snow suddenly hugged Dashigi in her arms. The icy breath quickly entered Dashigi's body along her skin, but did not cause her the slightest harm. Instead, it remained deep in her soul, as if it was being assimilated by her body. At this time, the kimono lady suddenly spoke. Dashigi, remember my name. My name is Sori Shirayuki. Wow. The world suddenly shattered like thin ice. When Dashigi opened her eyes again, a power that was familiar yet unfamiliar to her had successfully appeared in her body. This is... Dashigi looked at the Zanpakutō in her hand, which was still ordinary. Available in the next second. Her expression suddenly changed, and a pure white light flashed across her lenses. Dashigi then grabbed her Zanpakutō and swung it backwards with force. Dance! So Shirayuki. Swa. No one noticed what happened, but when Dashigi brought her Zanpakutō to her again, the originally plain long sword has turned into a pure white blade. At the end of the handle, there is a white ribbon fluttering in the air. Rather than a weapon for battle, it now looks more like a prop for dancers to use on stage, as if it was born to dance under the spotlight. Captain Kyle. Having understood what was going on, Dashigi raised her head excitedly and shouted in great surprise. You did all this? Of course. Kyle nodded in agreement. How about it, do you like the power of Shurkai? I like it. Dashigi turned sideways, staring directly at Sori no Shirayuki's beautiful blade that looked like a work of art, and answered excitedly. This is the most beautiful knife I have ever seen. As long as you like it. Seeing his partner so obsessed, Kyle also smiled. But what he cared more about was Dashigi's fighting power at this time. Kyle's consciousness suddenly changed, and he looked at Dashigi's partner interface in his mind again. This time, the one floating behind Dashigi is no longer Rukia in her normal form. And a dynamic illustration of Rukia in Death Hagakure, who is turning her Sori Shirayuki upside down, with the tip of the sword pointing downward, letting the white silk float around her body. Unfortunately, she's still flat-chested. Clicking his lips, Kyle turned his attention to the attribute panel. Partner, Dashigi, Rukia Kachiki. Qualification, A. Level, 47. Experience, 6830/8500. Combat power, 45120-67680. This value. Kyle's mind moved, and he immediately started calculating in his mind. Is it multiplied by 1.5 times? It's just the value in brackets. Does this mean that the combat power after awakening is not the real combat power? What a pity! Kyle's face showed an expression that was even sadder than seeing Rukia's flat chest. He even clicked on his captain's interface and took a look to make sure that his combat power had not changed due to Rukia's awakening. So the effect of awakening is, you can directly increase your combat power by half and gain some advanced power of the character itself? I don't know if this half combat power is the same for every companion when they first awaken, or if it's only the A-level ones. I can use Monka to test it next time. Kyle pondered secretly in his heart. After a moment, he raised his head again, interrupted Rukia, who was admiring Sori Shirayuki, and asked another question that concerned him. Page 90. Dashigi, how long can you last in this state? Is there any consumption in maintaining this state? Consumption? Dashigi waved the Sori Shirayuki a few times, creating a chill in the air. It seems that there is no consumption. It seems that I can maintain this form forever if I want. That's it. Hearing this answer, Kyle's eyes flashed again. That's acceptable, he murmured softly, then his expression changed and he gave Dashigi an inviting smile. So, Dashigi, would you like to use your newfound power to challenge me, the captain? Ah. Is that okay, Captain Kyle? I am very strong now. Dashigi shook the silk of Shirayuki and waved it playfully in the air a few times. A frosty breath suddenly emanated from her body. It can be seen that the sudden surge in power makes Dashigi full of confidence at this moment. Of course. Kyle smiled with interest. It just so happens that I have gained some new powers and I want to find someone to test them on. The dazzling white light gathered in his palm, emitting powerful power. A battle between light and snow instantly broke out in the training room. The light shines on the ice crystals, radiating outward with a wider perspective. In an instant, everything, with the two of them as the center, was shrouded in white. Just like that, time flies by. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. And just 3 days ago, a sensational news broke out in the East China Sea again. The newspaper reported. Captain Smoker, known as the hero of the East China Sea, encountered an island where pirates gathered during his patrol mission. Without saying a word, the colonel directly demonstrated his unrivaled strength in the East China Sea and wiped out dozens of pirate groups in one fell swoop. And his feat once again caused a sensation in the entire East China Sea. Nowadays, if Smoker appeared in a town in the East China Sea, he would definitely be loved by all the local people and enjoy petals floating in the sky and applause resounding through the clouds. It is said that some daughters of wealthy businessmen in the East China Sea even set up a fan club for Smoker, which was quite lively. However, the more the people of the East China Sea love Smoker, the more tormented Smoker feels in his heart. Because from the beginning to the end, all the praise he received came from the control of one person, a pirate. Bump! Smoker suddenly placed his hands on the table, stood up and asked angrily. Kyle, what the hell do you mean? As he spoke, he looked around. This is a conference room in the Black Gun Island office building. There were only a few people sitting at the huge round table. Blackheart, the ruler of Black Gun Island, Nokigo, the Archbishop of the Stormwitch Church, and Melly, the goat-headed agent of the Stormwitch Chamber of Commerce. And the one who controls everyone in the palm of his hand. The strongest pirate in the East Sea, the captain of the Dusk Pirates, Kyle. Smoker counted the identities of the people at the round table around him and was shocked to find that, except for himself, all the others were Kyle's subordinates. And he, like Kyle's subordinates, was invited to attend this inexplicable meeting. Then who the hell is he? Smoker was furious. But right opposite him, Kyle was smiling. He pressed his hand and smiled at Smoker. Don't be angry, Colonel Smoker. I am now one of the 7 warlords of the sea. According to the laws of the Navy, we are now a family. Ha 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 ha. You. Smoker pounded the table again, but he could do nothing to Kyle. Just because everything he said was true. Have to say. Doflamingo is really a good guy. After confirming that Kyle had let Laoji and Mahabasi go, he immediately sent someone to submit information about Kyle and the Dusk Pirates to the Navy, reporting him as a member of the Don Quixote family. In this way, according to the system of the 7 warlords of the sea, as long as Kyle does not take the initiative to provoke the Navy and the world government, no matter what actions he takes, he will be allowed by the Navy. And the evidence of his previous crimes will also be wiped out. This rule, of course, does not apply to everyone. But as he is just a small pirate from the East China Sea with a bounty of 3,000 million Baileys, the Navy will still give Doflamingo some face. Looking at the frustrated Smoker, Kyle's smile widened. He liked to see others getting angry and embarrassed, yet helpless about what they could do to him. Calm down, Colonel. What we are going to discuss next is something important concerning the East China Sea. Believe me, if you turn around and leave this conference room now, you will regret it for the rest of your life. Smoker clenched his fists. But in the end, under Kyle's gaze, he slowly sat back in his seat. He wanted to see what purpose this bastard had in calling all these people together. Kyle smiled. Now that everyone is here, let's officially start this meeting. Dai-sai-chi. Kyle clapped his hands twice. The next moment, under his instructions, Dashigi, wearing a miniskirt and a Death Tyrant outfit, walked into the conference room holding a prepared projection Den Mushi. Chapter 83 East China Sea Conference. Dashigi. Smoker, who had just sat down, was suddenly stunned. He raised his head and stared blankly at the girl who walked to Kyle and operated the projection Den Mushi obediently. Once upon a time, Dashigi was just a follower around him, and he often complained about her carelessness in doing things. But now, looking at that figure with sharp movements, like the secretary of the president of a large consortium. In this situation, Smoker felt that this was even more painful than killing him. He was obviously the one who came first. Why, in just a few months, Dashigi has completely transformed into Kyle's form. Smoker was confused, anxious, puzzled, and indescribable. Under Dashiki's skillful operation, a large screen was suddenly projected onto the curtain in front, which turned out to be a nautical map of the entire East China Sea. On the nautical chart, some places and locations are marked. The main content of this meeting is to discuss the future development direction of the Chamber of Commerce and the Church. The weapons production base in the East China Sea has been taken over by the Dusk Pirates. The next step is to use the existing cards in hand to expand the coverage of the Church and the Chamber of Commerce as quickly as possible. Because the targets of these two organizations are ordinary people in Donghai. One preaches religion, the other teaches martial arts. So Kyle plans to bring the two organizations together so that they can be as interdependent as possible. The staff of the Chamber of Commerce can be believers of the Church. The believers of the Church can also become fighters to escort the ships of the Chamber of Commerce. Now, as Nami grows stronger, the power she can bestow upon her believers is also becoming stronger. As long as a large number of believers are not praying for power at the same time, she can almost guarantee that no one can be a match for the followers of the Storm Witch Church in the East China Sea unless they are attacked by surprise. After the meeting, everyone expressed their opinions. Even Smoker, who was originally a little absent-minded, couldn't help but put forward two important suggestions from his Navy's perspective. The meeting lasted for a full 5 hours, and even the meals were prepared by CLO and delivered to the conference room. However, among the people present, including Smoker, no one raised any objection. There was excitement flashing in everyone's eyes. Smoker looked at everything in front of him, feeling both excited and scared. Even the way he looked at Kyle at this moment was completely different from before. He didn't know what the future of Donghai would look like in this man's plan. It's just because he has seen too much disappointment in the East China Sea Navy recently, so he is a little confused and doesn't know what else he, as a Navy, can do. Although Kyle's plan was full of undisguised selfish motives. But he could not deny that this was a great plan that would benefit the present and future generations. Smoker looked at the titles of the slides on the projector, from the initial plans of surrounding cities with rural areas, surrounding large countries with small islands, establishing churches and commercial centers, establishing punishment halls and Chamber of Commerce self-defense forces. Until the end of A World Without Thieves, and thank you for watching. Smoker saw a very terrifying aura in Kyle. In his opinion, if no more accidents come to stop him, Kyle will become the true uncrowned king of the entire East China Sea. If he wanted to do something at that time, no one would be able to stop him. For a moment, Smoker was extremely conflicted. Because he also occupies a huge proportion in this plan. For this plan, he needed to provide the location information of all small islands and towns in the East China Sea, and also count the areas in the East China Sea that were most frequently invaded by pirates, and select them as the priority targets for the plan. Page 91. Only when you are in suffering will you yearn for light more. People in such areas are more likely to become believers of the Storm Witch. Simultaneously. As a hero of the East China Sea, Smoker will have to use this identity to secure his position as the hidden Supreme Commander of the East China Sea Navy in the next few years and escort Kyle and his team's plans. That is to say, as a naval colonel, he not only had to use the Navy's resources to help Kyle, but also had to deceive his superiors and conceal the changes in the East China Sea as much as possible. Of course, Smoker didn't know whether it was right or wrong for him to join this plan. But he still came. Without him, the future that Kyle talked about was really in line with the justice in his heart. So much so that during the meeting, Smoker would think from time to time. Could it be that the GM army was established under such circumstances? End of the meeting. Multiple parties reached a consensus and took action quickly. The first merchant ship loaded with weapons set off quickly, and the person accompanying it was Nojigo, who could borrow the most power from Nami. At present, they have preliminarily set a price for this batch of weapons based on the costs of raw materials, labor, transportation, etc., so that as many people as possible can afford it. Later, they will adjust the pricing at any time based on the basic market conditions. These are issues that need to be considered between production bases and chambers of commerce in the future. At this time, Kyle was already on the Tiga, heading towards the other two islands. Nowadays in the underground world, his joining the Don Quixote family has become a hot topic in recent days. This will also save Kyle a lot of trouble. The rulers of the two islands have already prepared a grand welcome ceremony, waiting for the arrival of Kyle, the leader. Time passed slowly, half a month later. Kyle sat slumped in the captain's cabin of the Tiga, looking feebly at the ceiling, his eyes drooping, mumbling. "I'm so stupid. Really? If I had known this mess would be so complicated, I shouldn't have tried to be a hero." Kyle, who had already given up, suddenly stretched out his hands as if hugging something and let out a long, helpless sigh. It turns out, no matter how perfect the early planning is, when it comes to actual implementation, there will always be one or two problems that are like hairs in the soup, which obviously do not affect the taste of the soup but are impossible to ignore. The impact of the increase in raw material prices at the production base, the adjustment of holidays for the Chamber of Commerce's employees on board, and the assessment of job promotions within the church. Some things really look simple, but once you get started, they become completely irrelevant things. Fortunately, it is all over at last. After half a month of adjustment, not all problems were solved perfectly. But Kyle successfully handed over all the issues that should have been approved by him to the heads of various parties, and he completely became a hands-off boss. "I won't care about the rest of the things anymore." With his hands crossed behind his head, Kyle closed his eyes and enjoyed this rare moment of playing badly. However, at this moment, bulu 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 bru bulu bulu. Suddenly, a rapid telephone call rang out. Kyle opened his eyes impatiently. "What's wrong? Didn't we say that each party will solve their own problems and come to me if they can't solve them?" He looked at the long row of den den mushi on his desk, but strangely enough, at this moment, all of these den den mushi had their eyes closed and were sleeping. Okay? Kyle was stunned. But soon, he realized something and quickly reached out to the special den den mushi under the table. Ahem. Kyle coughed twice, adjusted his state, and then picked up the microphone. "Marshall, do you have any instructions?" Chapter 84, Welcoming New Partners. Kyle. A steady voice soon came from the Den Den Mushi. Den Den Mushi's expression also became serious. "It's me, Marshall." Kyle also showed a righteous look, completely different from his previous lazy look. "There's nothing we can do about it. It's because there is no voice call in this world. If he doesn't behave properly, the Den Den Mushi on the other side will see it immediately." In front of the marshal, Kyle still didn't dare to be too presumptuous. When the call was connected, a glimmer of appreciation appeared in the eyes of the Den Den Mushi. "I've heard about what happened in the East China Sea recently. Well done. Thank you for the compliment, Marshal." Kyle immediately responded modestly, "This is what I should do." "Ha, if every agent could perform to your level, the Navy would have enforced justice throughout the world long ago." Far away in Marinford, Sengoku had a pleased smile on his face and joked with Kyle cordially. For Zhanghua, choosing Kyle to be a spy can be said to be the most correct decision he has made in recent years. Kyle did not hide the fact that he had joined the Don Quixote family from Zhanghua, and it could even be said that he informed Marshal Zhanghua as soon as possible. At that time, Sengoku, who was still worried about the situation in the New World, was really shocked. At first, he even thought that Kyle was going to follow the same path as his adopted son Rosinante. But after a conversation with Kyle, Zhangguo quickly realized that Kyle and Rosinante were taking completely two different paths. At least for now, Kyle's move did not seem too dangerous, but it succeeded in making a huge overhaul of the underground weapons market in the East China Sea. Simply occupying a weapons production base without taking any action will inevitably arouse suspicion from others. Kyle chose to sell weapons to civilians, which not only weakened the pirate forces in the East China Sea, gave the people a sense of security, but also made a small amount of money. This move will not affect Kyle's career as an agent, except that the pirates in the East China Sea will privately scold Kyle for meddling in other people's business. After all, there are quite a few kind-hearted pirates in this ocean, and there are also many pirate groups whose operations are even more outrageous than this. What really surprised Zhangguo was a secret agent was able to turn the once murky East China Sea into what it is now without arousing anyone's suspicion. Based on this alone, Zhangguo is willing to call Kyle the strongest agent in history. No doubt about it. After that, Zhangguo immediately raised Kyle's confidentiality level and reduced the frequency of calls with Kyle, for fear that Kyle's true identity would be exposed by others. Today's call was made out of necessity because of something that happened a long time ago. Hearing the marshal's high praise, Kyle immediately showed an expression of being flattered, lowered his head and smiled. "Your Excellency Marshal, you are too kind." "Okay, I saw everything you did." Zhangguo raised his lips, his eyes revealing his love for Kyle, and then he went straight to the point and said, "Kyle, do you remember what I told you a month ago?" "A month ago?" Kyle looked thoughtful at first, then his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had suddenly realized something. "The Marshal is talking about forming a sword force?" "Yes. That's exactly it." The expression of the Den Den Mushi in front of Kyle suddenly became stern. "Originally, I wanted to give you more responsibilities after a while. But now that you have successfully infiltrated the Don Quixote family, this sword army must also begin to take formal action. The personnel you requested have already arrived in the East China Sea. They are all elite talents secretly trained by the Navy. They are waiting for your instructions in Rogue Town. You can find a way to accept them into your pirate group." After taking a deep breath and hesitating for a moment, Zhangguo suddenly said seriously, "Kyle, your abilities have repeatedly exceeded my imagination. Now you are stuck in a quagmire where I can't help you at all. I don't ask Sword to achieve any results immediately, but there is one piece of information that I must tell you. According to the Navy's investigation, there is a person in Doflamingo's family who is suspected to possess the ability of the childlike fruit. The power of this fruit is very terrifying. The user can turn anyone he touches into a toy, and at the same time, make all memories of him disappear completely from the rest of the world. Although it doesn't exist in my memory, I guess that the Navy and the world government should have sent spies to the Don Quixote family more than once. But judging from the current situation, these people should all have failed." Having said this, Zhangguo's voice suddenly fell silent. Although he had no memory of it, he could imagine how desperate those spies he had sent before must be at this moment. After a moment of silence, Zhangguo spoke again. "If possible, I hope that the sword team can investigate the identity of the user of the childlike fun fruit as much as possible. But you also have to be careful. I don't want any outstanding young people to be forgotten." The atmosphere suddenly froze. After a moment's deliberation, Kyle's eyes suddenly lit up with a righteous fire, and he answered firmly, like a soldier about to go to the battlefield. "Please rest assured, Marshal. I know what to do." "Well, I believe you." As Marshal Zhangguo's last words fell, the encrypted call was completely hung up. But after hanging up the phone, Kyle's mouth corners immediately raised into a mysterious arc. The fruit of childishness? I didn't expect Marshal Sengoku to know so much. But it's true. The toys of Dressrosa are walking around the streets so openly. It's difficult for the Navy not to be suspicious. I just wonder if Marshal Sengoku will reward me with 1 billion or 800 million if I can remove the power of the childlike fun fruit? Page 92. Kyle, whose thoughts were scattered, suddenly began to fantasize, and a confident smile slowly appeared at the corner of his mouth. He is not being arrogant. Today, it has been exactly 21 days since the defeat of Raoji and Mahabais. For other people, 21 days may be just a very ordinary period of time in life. But for Kyle, 21 days is enough time for him and his partners to reach a new level of strength. Now, with 7 tools working hard to train Kyle, his combat power has soared to over 14, and he has completely entered the ranks of the world's top powerhouses. Although Kyle doesn't dare to compete with Doflamingo, a top-level Shichibukai. But combining a series of skills such as space movement and dragon-slaying magic, he thought that he should have no problem dealing with 7 warlords of the sea like Crocodile and Gecko Mariah. More importantly, his fighting power is changing every day. As long as he has enough partners, he will soon become the strongest in the world. It's really exciting. Kyle gave a playful smile, and then he suddenly knocked on the table. Digga! The next second, little Tiga, who had not changed at all, suddenly appeared in the captain's room. What do you want, Captain Kyle? Kyle grinned and said, change direction. Let's not go to the doldrums to test the sailing speed first. We are going to Rogue Town to meet new partners. Chapter 85 Drake, Peacock and Skylark. Great! Upon hearing that a new companion was going to join the ship, little Tiga immediately clapped his hands happily. Next moment. There was no sign of him making any specific movements, but the Tiga was rotating on the sea and moving in another direction. At the same time, on the bustling streets of Rogue Town, a burly man wearing a Zoro-style eye mask exuded a powerful aura as he squeezed through the crowd, looking hurried. With a solemn expression on his face, he soon arrived at a quiet room in Rogue Town. As soon as I entered the room, a slightly enchanting voice suddenly appeared. How's it going, Major General Drake? Any news? Has the person who was going to pick us up arrived? Not yet. The man being questioned, Drake, shook his head. As he spoke, he suddenly took out a small piece of paper from his pocket. As soon as the small piece of paper appeared, it immediately floated upwards and drifted in a certain direction, but was caught by Drake again. That's it. The enchanting girl sighed slightly in disappointment. What a shame. I want to see what the guy who can take the position of sword captain from Major General Drake looks like as soon as possible. By the way, does Major General Drake hate the other party very much now? This is our first meeting, so I'll use the excuse of testing my strength to teach him a lesson. I love watching 2 men fighting the most. He. The charming girl suddenly revealed an evil smile, as if she thought of something interesting, and her cheeks flushed. Please restrain my odor, Brigadier General Peacock. Derek glanced at Peacock, unfazed by the possible provocation in her words. The other party is an agent that Marshal Zhangguo trusts more than us. I don't want to leave a bad impression on him because of you. And Marshal Zhangguo said, the other party's strength may be a little weak. Our main task is to serve as the captain's bodyguard. Don't say anything rude to the new captain because of this. Hey! I get it. Peacock smacked his lips. Really? It was just a joke. Why are you taking it so seriously? Are you kidding? You better be. Drake glanced at Peacock again. As someone who came from the same training camp, he was well aware of the young girl's bad taste. This woman's favorite thing to do is to manipulate others and then make them do some weird things. Simply put, he is a typical fun-loving person. Drake looked around the safe house and suddenly asked, by the way, where's Skylark? She? Peacock looked out the window and smiled. I heard that Luwaga Town is holding a tourism festival recently, and outsiders can get ice cream for free. She should be queuing now. Ice cream. This guy. Drake rubbed his temple with a headache and was about to say something. But at this moment, the door of the safe house was suddenly opened. A girl with a sweet smile came running in, skipping and holding an ice cream. Miss Peacock, look, there is wasabi-flavored ice cream here. It's incredible. Yun-Kei walked into the house holding a pile of ice cream, but what greeted her was a pair of majestic eyes. Ah! The smile on Yun-Kei's face disappeared instantly, and he immediately lowered his head like a child who had done something wrong. Major General Drake, why are you back? Why shouldn't I come back? Drake looked at Skylark speechlessly. No, no, no. Yun-Kei shook his head repeatedly, and the ponytail behind him swung along with it. That's not what I meant. I want to say. Never mind. Drake waved his hands, feeling exhausted. He just said. Anyway, I'm no longer your captain, and I can't control you. Do whatever you want. As he spoke, Drake took out the small piece of paper from his arms again, then sat alone in the corner, watching the small piece of paper slowly rise into the air. This small piece of paper, called the life card, is some kind of magical prop made using Kyle's fingernails. As long as there is no external interference, the small piece of paper will fly straight towards Kyle. Before leaving Marinford, Sengoku and Kizaru each created a life card for Kyle. The one in Drake's hand at this moment was torn from the one in the Warring States period. Looking at the life cards floating in front of him, Drake was thinking secretly. He has longed to join the Navy since he was a child. After his father betrayed the Navy, he was protected by the Navy. In fact, he has a very conservative personality and is the kind of guy who obeys his superiors' arrangements 100%. But even so, the position of sword captain that was originally designated was suddenly taken away by someone else. It was impossible for him to remain calm. At this moment, Drake was really curious about what his future leader would look like. He habitually released the life card in his hand again and watched it slowly float up. But suddenly, his eyes widened. Drake stood up suddenly, startling Skylark and Peacock, who were sharing ice cream. Just when the two wanted to ask what happened, Drake's face instantly revealed an expression of great surprise, and he shouted, "Coming!" As he spoke, Drake let go of the life card in his hand again, and was shocked to find that it had indeed slightly changed direction and floated up. As we all know, if the base of a right triangle remains unchanged, the shorter the other right-angled side is, the larger the angle formed by this right-angled side and the hypotenuse will be. And just now, in just a few seconds, the life card in Drake's hand actually turned twice in a row. This also means that the target connected to the life card is getting closer and closer to them. This speed of change. There's no mistake. The owner of the life card should be near the island. Drake immediately informed his other two companions of his discovery. Peacock and Skylark, realizing the problem, didn't bother to share the ice cream and hurriedly began to pack their luggage, preparing to follow Drake to meet their new superior. At the same time, a violent riot suddenly broke out at the port of Rogue Town. Pirates! They're pirates! Pirates are approaching Rogue Town. Oh my god! That flag, that's the Dusk Pirates. Run! I heard that they have joined the Shichibukai and now have the legal right to plunder. Even the Navy can't do anything to them. No. It's okay. We have the East Sea hero Smoker guarding our rogue town. Even if he's one of the 7 warlords of the sea, so what? He wouldn't dare to do anything to us. Maybe he's just here to get supplies. With the appearance of the huge warship, the entire port suddenly became noisy. But perhaps it was Smoker's recent feat that gave the people of the East China Sea a bit of confidence, and many people remained calm after seeing the appearance of the Tiga. In the sea outside the port, Kyle, standing at the bow, looked at the ships fleeing and avoiding to both sides, and couldn't help but smile and shook his head. This pirate is really hated by everyone. We should find the people sent by Zhangguo and leave as soon as possible. Okay, Tiga, let's stop here. The huge warship slowly stopped a little away from Rogue Town. Kyle stood at the bow and smiled. The next moment, his figure suddenly disappeared from the Tiga. At the same time, amid the noisy crowd at the port, a mysterious figure suddenly appeared. Kyle turned around and looked at the people who were still looking at the Tiga in the distance. He raised the corner of his mouth and instantly disappeared into the crowd. Chapter 86. Chapter 86 Green. Although at this time Kyle still didn't know who the warring states would send to serve as his subordinates. But he could sense from Sengoku's tone how serious he was about this sword team. And if that's the case, maybe I can actually send Drake over here to become a pirate with me. Kyle looked at the character card of Tyrannosaurus in his backpack and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He knew that the newcomers had their life cards in their hands, so the next thing he had to do was to find a quiet place and wait silently. Soon, Kyle walked into a quiet cafe. It was the same family he had kidnapped Dashigi from before. I didn't expect to come back here. Maybe this is fate. I hope you won't make me wait too long, my lovely subordinates. Kyle ordered a cup of heavy milk latte, found a seat by the window, and quietly enjoyed this rare afternoon time. However, at this moment, jingle bell bell. The cafe's welcoming wind chime suddenly rang, attracting Kyle's attention. Soon, a red-haired girl wearing only a dark blue special attack uniform and restraining the surging waves with bandages walked into the cafe with a grin. Let me go. Dozaya. I must teach that guy a lesson. How dare you bully my subordinates? I will never let them go. The green-haired guy spoke in a hoarse voice and made a lot of noise, completely breaking the tranquility of the cafe. But no one present, including the cafe owner, dared to scold this noisy guy. The girl Dozaya, who was holding the green, used all her strength to hold on to the green. Are you crazy, Barto? They are subordinates of the 7 warlords of the sea. Even if you defeat them, you will bring disaster upon yourself. Okay? Subordinates of the 7 warlords of the sea? Kyle, who was watching the fun, was suddenly stunned. His eyes widened instantly and he looked curious. Could it be that the guy these two people were talking about was actually me? Strange, I don't remember having any encounter with this guy. Kyle looked ahead in confusion. The moment the two men entered the room, he recognized their identities. Green, Bartolomeo. In the original plot, he is Luffy's senior fanboy and the fan leader of the Straw Hat Pirates. He chased his idol to the point of being next to the star and even made himself a supernova. He is a One Piece fan envied by all One Piece fans. The person who was holding him should be Bartolomeo's childhood sweetheart, Dozaya. Kyle remembered that Dozaya seemed to be secretly in love with Barto, but Barto only had eyes for Luffy, which led to the two of them parting ways later. But it's a rare opportunity to meet two guys with potential, so let's tie them both up on the boat. Kyle's eyes flashed, and he tested the character cards in his backpack against the two people one by one. Soon, he got an answer that satisfied him. The compatibility between Dozaya and the character card Peacock Dance is as high as 75%. Another perfect tool who can start work right after getting on board. Seeing that the two were still arguing, Kyle suddenly stood up and smiled at the two people who were quarreling. You two, this is a public place, please don't make too much noise. Mind your own business, don't you know who I am? Hearing someone standing up to scold him, Barto retorted out of habit. Then he turned his attention back to Dozaya. Let me go, Dozaya, I will never let that guy Kyle go. Let me go, Put. Barto, who was struggling hard, suddenly leaned forward and slammed his face hard on the ground. Ah! Bastard! Barto, who had fallen and had his face covered in mud, turned around angrily. I told you to let go, but I didn't let you let go suddenly. However, in the face of his yelling, Dozaya, who usually would immediately retort, fell silent at this moment. Ha! What's wrong with you? Barto frowned, feeling something was wrong, but he saw that his hot-tempered childhood sweetheart was now extending a finger and pointing forward blankly. Barto looked in that direction curiously, and then his expression also froze for a moment. Kyle. Barto, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly stood up, shook off the dust on his face, and revealed an angry expression. Great! I didn't expect you to be here. That saves me from having to look for you. Oh? Kyle smiled lightly, revealing a puzzled expression. You're looking for me? But why don't I remember any grudges between us? Of course you don't remember. Barto laughed fiercely and said, how could a big shot like you remember the affairs of a small shot? But I will never forget the last time you bullied my little brother while I was away. Bullying your younger brother. Kyle was stunned for a moment and quickly recalled in his mind. Soon, he thought of a few months ago when he had just arrived in Rogue Town. In order to buy drugs to knock out Dashigi, he forced himself to have an in-depth conversation with several street thugs who were collecting protection fees and obtained information. Ah. So you were talking about that time. Kyle, who understood what was going on, raised his lips and said with a smile. So those guys are your brothers. What a coincidence. Damn it. Don't talk so lightly, bastard. I'm going to teach you a lesson today. As he spoke, Barto stood up and swung his fist towards Kyle. After all, he is the boss of more than 150 town gangs. The strength that Barto has unleashed at this time is comparable to that of the Fishman Dragon who retired from the New World. Only. That's all. Bang! A dull sound suddenly occurred. However, the scene that Barto had expected, where he would knock someone away with one punch, did not happen. How is this possible? He showed an expression of disbelief, with horror flashing in his eyes. In front of him, a not-so-big palm blocked his fist steadily, making him unable to move at all. Nice power. Kyle smiled slightly, with approval in his eyes. But that expression was just like a parent coaxing his child to play, and leader Barto instantly became angry. Don't underestimate me. Damn bastard. Strike the barrier. Boo. Barto's other hand suddenly made a strange movement, overlapping his middle finger and index finger. The next moment, a transparent square barrier suddenly appeared between him and Kyle, and then rushed towards Kyle violently. Ha! Kyle raised his eyebrows, revealing a slightly surprised expression. He quickly used space movement to teleport away from the impact of the barrier. The barrier that was originally flying towards him, however, broke through the wall of the cafe and disappeared onto the street. Did you eat the barrier fruit so early? But it's true. Without some strength, how could you become the leader of a gang that rules over 150 towns? Kyle teleported behind Barto and chuckled thoughtfully, then raised his head. What a terrifying power. But oh, it's not a good behavior to just smash other people's things casually. Remember to ask your little brother to send the money back to them later. Oh, by the way, you haven't been kicked by Guan, have you? Kyle grinned. Hakoryo's Justice Kick. Chapter 87. Who is the idiot talking about? But oh, watch out behind you. Dazaya cried out loudly, but it was too late. The blazing white light flickered in the small cafe, bright and dazzling, as if sucking all the shadows into it. The owner and customers in the cafe were so frightened by this sudden turn of events that they huddled in a corner, shivering. Okay? Barto was about to turn around after hearing Dazaya's reminder, but the next second. Boom! The boiling magic power turned into a dazzling white light and suddenly bombarded Barto's waist, accurately delivering a series of backstabs and kidney shots. Damage increase plus 100%. Under the horrific impact, Barto's expression instantly became extremely funny. His mouth opened into an O shape, his body bent into a C shape, and then he flew directly onto the street along the big hole that was previously created by the barrier. Ah! It hurts so much. After landing, Barto rolled and crawled on the ground, leaving a trail of more than 10 meters, then he covered his waist and wailed twistedly. But oh! Worried, Dazaya shouted and quickly shook the beautiful giant in front of him. He strode over, squatted beside Barto, and checked his injuries. Lifting up Barto's clothes, a charred footprint was clearly engraved on his skin. At this moment, Kyle's voice came again. Do not worry. He walked in front of the two of them with a relaxed pace, then smiled and comforted them. Page 94. I didn't use too much force. Given his physical condition, this blow would at most hurt him for a while, but it wouldn't leave any hidden injuries. Unfortunately, the perpetrator's comfort was completely useless. Kyle. Hearing Kyle's voice, Dazaya immediately looked up, his eyes wide with horror. But in an instant, a hint of determination suddenly flashed across her beautiful eyes. A light breeze blew through the street, blowing up the withered yellow leaves on the roadside. There was a pop. This wealthy and generous beauty knelt down on the ground and covered the ground with her long pink hair mixed with a little gold. Lord Kyle. We apologize. We were blind and provoked someone we shouldn't have provoked. Please be magnanimous and let us go. At this moment, Dazaya has faced the reality. He can easily block Barto's attack, and has an unobservable movement method. Barto's power is not enough to defeat Kyle in front of him. They are not even on the same level. Just like the gap between their younger brothers and them, like a chasm. Worried about Barto, Dazaya did not hesitate and chose to kneel down and beg for mercy.
Seeing the scene in front of him, Barto, who was still wailing, immediately struggled to get up.
Dazaya, what are you doing? Stand up now. My fight isn't over yet.
The stubborn Barto possesses a foolish spirit of refusing to admit defeat, and it seems that he still wants to fight Kyle for 300 rounds.
However, his stubbornness was met with a roar from Dazaya. Shut up! You idiot! Do you want to die here? At Dazaya's sudden shout, Barto suddenly closed his mouth with a dull look in his eyes. The next second. Barrier ball. Swish. A transparent spherical barrier suddenly appeared and directly wrapped up Barto and Dazaya, leaving no space at all. Then, Barto opened his mouth wide and made an ugly face. Ha ha ha, idiot, you've been fooled. Baka. Baka. You must have been tricked by me. Ha 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 ha. My barrier has absolute defense, you can't break it. And the battle here will soon attract the attention of the Navy, and you will be arrested by the Navy soon. Stupid pirate. Barto taunted, pressing his grimace against the barrier. Under the pressure of the barrier, the face with sharp fangs and the green, can be said to have naturally formed a piece of postmodern abstract art. Bato, you. Dazaya raised his head in surprise and looked at Barto in astonishment and speechlessness. Originally, she thought that Kyle was a gentle and polite person, and there was no murderous tone in his words, so she thought that she could just beg for mercy and let the matter go. Did not expect. This idiot childhood sweetheart had easily messed up things to the point where there was no chance of recovery. Aren't you forcing the other party to fight you to death? At the same time. What happened? The sound of bombing in the cafe and Barto's sharp voice instantly attracted the attention of many people. Passers-by who were eager to watch the fun gathered around and formed a circle around the area. Perhaps because there were so many tourists, many people did not recognize Barto, the gang leader. Instead, they looked at the battlefield curiously with flames of gossip in their eyes. But soon, some sharp-eyed guys recognized Kyle and his group. That's the gangster Bartolomeo, and the captain of the Dusk Pirates, Kyle. Oh my god, why are the two of them fighting? What? Pirate Kyle? Isn't his ship still in the open sea? How did he land on the island? Panic quickly spread among the crowd. Many people have begun to realize that the situation is not good and are running outside. As to whether they wanted to escape from this troubled place or report to the Navy, it was unknown. But more people chose to stay where they were. Joke. A battle between a great pirate and a gang leader? Such a wonderful battle scene may only happen once in your lifetime. A rare opportunity to see a grand spectacle is right before your eyes. Who would leave at such an important moment? In an instant, the crowd was divided into two waves. One wave squeezes outwards, the other wave pushes inwards, and the two waves rub against each other. And the other side. Drake and his two companions, who had been following the floating trajectory of the lifeguard, suddenly stopped after hearing the conversation between the people around them. Strange, it seems like there are pirates landing on the island. Yun-Kei looked forward curiously. Drake's brows furrowed instantly and he remained silent. The shapely peacock reached into his collar, slowly pulled out a whip, and stretched it out in front of him. What should we do, Admiral Drake? Should we go and solve the pirate problem? Although they are secret agents, they should not meddle in other people's affairs before completing their mission. But just watching pirates oppress the people is not their style. Wait a moment. Drake looked thoughtful. As he spoke, he suddenly raised the life card in his hand and looked at the direction where the paper was fluttering. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. The owner of the life card is also in that direction. The appearance of the pirates and the rotation of the life card are almost the same time. After a moment's silence,
he suddenly clutched the life card in his hand. A smile played on the corner of his mouth.
This surprise is really hard to imagine.
Marshal, what kind of captain have you chosen for us?
Let's go. Let's go there.
As soon as he finished speaking, Drake waved his hand and stepped forward.
Peacock and Skylark looked at each other while listening to him talking to himself. The only difference is, the peacock's eyes flickered, as if thinking about something.
But Skylark had a silly look on his face and had no idea what Drake was talking about.
The center of the riot.
Looking at Bartolomeo's grimace stuck on the barrier, Kyle's forehead suddenly became dark. At this moment, he seemed to regret the decision he had made before.
Are you really going to pull this fool on board?
Come to think of it, although my crew members have various identities, they all seem to be serious guys.
I don't have Luffy's carefree personality. With an idiot like this by my side, our compatibility shouldn't be very high, right?
But, looking at Dezaya, who perfectly matched the character card Peacock dance, Kyle's eyes suddenly showed a conflicted look.
He knows.
This girl secretly has a crush on Bartolomeo, and if she can't get them packed on board, she probably won't really join the Dusk Pirates. If you can't join sincerely, you won't be able to load the character card.
After hesitating for a moment, Kyle made up his mind. Oh. Just be an idiot.
Pretty girls always like to be friends with ugly girls.
Having an idiot around you might make you appear more intelligent.
Moreover, the barrier fruit is a powerful fruit that can block attacks from the four emperors, and it can also be considered a bug-level rule-based fruit.
Plus, Barto is really talented.
In a short period of time, Kyle recalled several of Barto's advantages in his mind at the same time, and finally convinced himself.
Just get this idiot on board.
He raised his head and looked calmly at Barto inside the barrier. He first sighed secretly in his heart, and then he showed a faint smile.
You don't think that if you leave the space small enough so that I can't teleport in, I can't do anything to you, right, Barto? Ha!
Barto and the barrier became alert instantly, put away his grimace and looked directly at Kyle. He first looked around guiltily, and finally laughed arrogantly.
You don't have to bluff anymore. You can't break through my barrier before the Navy arrives.
Just wait till you're arrested by the Navy.
Ah! Kyle suddenly sighed. Once an idiot becomes confident, he is truly hopeless. Asshole! Who are you calling an idiot? Barto jumped up and cursed. But in an instant. Chapter 88.
But he noticed the strange scarlet color that flashed across Kyle's eyes.
Of course I'm talking about you, idiot Bartolomeo. Kyle grinned, Tsukuyomi. Chapter 88, Fairness.
A strange full moon hung in the tattered and dark sky, emitting a dim light, shining on the desolate and bloody earth. In the blink of an eye, Barto seemed to have traveled through time and space and instantly appeared in this strange place. He looked around in astonishment, his eyes filled with confusion.
What's going on? How did I suddenly appear here? Barto shouted in confusion.
Looking around, the bloody world seems endless, yet also like a reincarnation.
In the silent darkness, he seemed to see another self.
At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the horizon, and it seemed to be right next to Barto's ear.
Welcome to my world, Barto. Who is it?
Barto was horrified and quickly made a gesture to release the barrier, looking around. Soon he saw a figure that was out of tune with this world suddenly walking out from the ripples of the void.
It's me, Barto. In the Tsukuyomi space, Kyle showed a meaningful smile and came in front of Barto. Barto shouted in confusion, Kyle. Is that you?
Where is this place? Although his tone was still very arrogant, the barrier ball he created the moment he saw Kyle fully demonstrated Barto's true feelings at the moment. With the barrier ball to protect himself, Barto regained his courage and shouted excitedly.
Tell me how to get out of here. Otherwise.
Barto's voice gradually faded. Because he suddenly discovered that in this strange place, he had no way to compete with Kyle at all.
Ha 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 ha.
Seeing Barto's deflated look at this moment, Kai suddenly burst out laughing.
What else would happen, Mr. Barto?
The next second, he suddenly looked up, revealing a pair of eyes that were eerily calm.
Have you forgotten what I just said? This is my world. Snapped. A crisp snap of fingers suddenly sounded, and the barrier ball protecting Barto disappeared instantly. Barto was left standing there in a daze, with a confused look on his face and his eyes turned into small dots.
Eh? He blinked in surprise, and was reluctant to put down his arms that were crossed in front of his chest, but he couldn't utter a word for a long time.
Kyle walked up to him step by step. Suddenly, a square table appeared between him and Barto. There were 2 muskets placed on the square table. Kyle reached out and picked up one of the muskets, waved it in front of his eyes for a moment, and then smiled mysteriously. I might as well tell you that this is a spiritual world isolated from the outside world. If I want, you will be trapped here for the rest of your life. And your real body will turn into a vegetable. What did you say? How could such a weird power exist in this world?
Barto trembled and subconsciously took a half step back, but he quickly retracted his foot and looked at Kyle stubbornly.
For a moment, their eyes met.
Looking at Kyle's dark eyes with a calm smile, Barto's heart suddenly trembled. At this moment, he knew that what the other party said was true.
What do you want?
Barto's voice trembled. After persisting for so long, he finally started to get a little scared. But Kyle suddenly stretched out his arm, pointed the dangerous muzzle of the gun at his forehead, and smiled slightly.
You are quite strong, and your fruit ability is very powerful. It would be a shame for you to stay in this sea area. Besides, I don't think you are someone who is willing to stay content. How about join my pirate group and turn the world upside down with me? What? Barto was obviously stunned for a moment.
After being surprised, he finally reacted and corrected himself.
Are you inviting me? What else? Kyle answered his question with a rhetorical question.
Barto stared at the deep muzzle of the gun in front of him, his eyes blank.
Why can you answer so confidently? Put a gun to someone's head and then invite them? How did you come up with this useful negotiation method? Your gun. Barto gently stretched out his finger and tapped the muzzle of the gun on his forehead. Ah? That's what you mean?
Kyle smiled slightly, raised his hand to move the gun away, and explained.
Don't get me wrong.
I just think that a guy like you would never willingly follow someone else, so I came up with this relatively fair game. As he spoke, Kyle swung his arm backwards and slapped it on the table with a bang.
I think you should face the reality now. Whether it's strength or ability, you are no match for me. In order to prevent you from thinking that I am bullying you, why don't we compete in this last item? If you can beat me in this last item, I will let you go safely. But if you lose, you will have to willingly join my pirate group and become my subordinate. Gudong. Barto suddenly choked up. What are you competing for? It's easy.
Kyle raised the musket again, but this time, he pointed the muzzle at himself and rushed towards Barto with the butt of the gun. He smiled confidently. Let's have a contest of wills.
Will? Barto asked uncertainly. Kyle immediately explained, that's right. It's will. This is the spiritual world I created. You and I who appear here are both our spiritual bodies. Even if our spirit bodies are cut by knives, burned by fire, or shot, it will not cause us real harm or death. It will only continue to torture our will. Today we will have a competition. We will shoot and kill each other. Then we will be resurrected and shoot again. We will repeat this process over and over again. See who can be more resolute when facing death. To be fair, I'll let you fire the gun first.
Kyle swung the musket in his hand casually, and it instantly spun into the sky and landed steadily in Barto's hand. Immediately, he opened his arms, put his forehead on it, and said with a smile. Come on. A guy like you should be confident in your own will, right? Let me see how strong your proud will is. Pang. A gunshot suddenly rang out in this vast bloody world. Barto retracted his finger on the trigger, a crazy smile appearing on the corner of his mouth.
Interesting. I'm in on this game.
A wisp of gray smoke swayed upward from the muzzle of the musket. Just as Kyle said, a guy with a distinctive personality like Barto always has an incomprehensible confidence in himself. This self-confidence often puts them in trouble, but even so, they would rather die on the path they have chosen than change their style of doing things. Because this is their will. Very good. Next, it's my turn. Kyle, with a bloody hole on his forehead, smiled and slowly stood up. During this process, the wound on his forehead had begun to heal, as if he had never been injured. Then he immediately picked up another musket on the table, pointed the muzzle at Barto, and pulled the trigger without hesitation.
Pang! Gunfire rang out again.
But all this is just the beginning. In the following time, in this spiritual space created by Tsukuyomi, the sharp sound of gunfire appeared one after another and lasted for a very long time. At the same time, in the moon reading space,
Kyle looked at Barto playing the Pong game with the phantom he created, and yawned out of boredom.
Immediately, he stretched out his hand and created a single sofa for himself, then he sank directly into it, and then a magazine appeared in his hand. Kyle flipped through the magazine and murmured in anticipation.
Don't make me wait too long, Barto. Chapter 89 Meet the Captain. Competing with anime characters and willpower? Do not make jokes.
Even now, Kyle, whose mental power has been amplified by the system, is not sure that he can defeat these anime characters. He had already seen this with Bucky. So in order to make Bartolomeo join his team willingly, Kyle had to resort to this last resort and use a little trick.
Page 96. Time passes little by little.
In the blink of an eye, 72 hours had passed in the Tsukuyomi space. According to real-time calculation, 3 days and 3 nights have passed. Finally, after a gunshot from Phantom Kyle, the exhausted Barto fell to the ground and never got up again. Although one will not really die if he dies in the Tsukuyomi space, every death of Barto is a consumption of his mental strength. Kyle, who uses illusions, is destined not to have this kind of consumption. The ending of this bet was already written from the beginning.
Kyle wondered if Barto had ever suspected that he might cheat.
But all this is no longer important.
Real world, Rogue Town.
No matter how much time has passed in the Tsukuyomi space, in the real world, it is only a second, a blink of an eye. Suddenly, the barrier covering Barto and Dazaya was inexplicably shattered.
Barto, who was guarding Dazaya, staggered back and fell to the ground again. Bato! Dazaya, who didn't understand what was going on, screamed in shock.
But the weak Barto suddenly grabbed Dazaya's shoulders, barely avoiding getting too embarrassed. He raised his head and looked at Kyle. After thinking for a long time, he said softly,
I lost. Kyle smiled.
Then according to the rules of the bet, from now on, you are my crew member.
Crew.
At this moment, whether it was Dazaya who was supporting Barto, or the people around who were watching the fun, they all had distorted faces, not understanding what was going on.
The situation was tense just a second ago, why is it now? How is this going?
Dazaya, who became the substitute for the surrounding audience, was confused and asked Barto quickly.
This matter is a bit complicated.
Barto's eyes flickered, and he wanted to turn his head to avoid Dazaya's sight, but a weak pain suddenly invaded his head.
Being shot at for 3 days and 3 nights would make even the best of people become abnormal.
He is still able to speak with energy, which means he is a man of strong will.
Okay, Barto, let me explain the rest. Kyle waved his hand to attract Dazaya's attention, then he smiled calmly and explained. It's like this. Barto just made a small bet with me.
If he loses, he will become my subordinate and go out to sea as a pirate with me.
What? Bet.
Dazaya looked at Barto blankly, then at Kyle, and exclaimed.
How come I didn't know when you made the bet? That's not important, what's important is. Kyle interrupted Dazaya with a smile, looked directly at Dazaya and said with a smile.
Excuse me, Miss Dazaya, are you interested in joining my pirate group with Barto?
What?
Dazaya was stunned for a moment, then his eyes widened suddenly, and he stood there, at a loss as to what to do. At this moment, she felt that her brain was totally insufficient.
What kind of divine expansion is this? They were clearly fighting a minute ago, but after a few words, they suddenly started recruiting soldiers? And Dazaya looked at the unconscious Barto and thought quickly. Although Barto is a thick-skinned and unreliable guy, he would never joke about such things. In other words, this guy Barto is really going to go out to sea as a pirate. For a moment, Dazaya felt mixed emotions. In her life plan, there had never been an option of going out to sea as a pirate. However, if this guy is going to go out to sea. Hateful. What a bastard who actually causes trouble for others. After cursing inwardly, Dazaya immediately made a decision. She lowered her head and whispered. If Barto wants to go out to sea with you, Lord Kyle, please let me join your pirate group. Ha 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 ha. Welcome to join us. Kyle looked at the unconscious Barto and said with a smile. My ship is parked in the sea outside of Rogue Town. You have 3 days to prepare for sailing. Gather on board the Tiga in 3 days. I understand, Captain. Although everything was so confusing, Dazaya quickly found his position and lowered his head. Ah. Kyle nodded with satisfaction and watched Dazaya and the other man leave. And in a blink of an eye. His gaze, however, turned directly to the crowd in the distance. To be precise, it was the weird combination of one man and 2 women in the crowd. I didn't expect that Sengoku would actually send Drake to be a pirate with me? That's really, you think too highly of me. Kyle's mouth corners instantly raised. Because he knew that his tool team needed to recruit more members. He might not remember what Drake looked like, but that Zoro-like mask was too recognizable. But after Barto and the others left, Kyle did not immediately go forward to greet Drake and the others. Instead, he turned and left, heading towards the port. Along the way, no one dared to stand in front of Kyle, and they all crowded to the sides of the street to make way for him. Kyle was like a lone hero, enjoying the wide streets alone. He seemed to glance in our direction just now. In the crowd, Peacock stared at Kyle's back in a daze. The Skylark standing aside had his eyes flashing with expectation. I never thought that our new captain would be a pirate. And he is the strongest pirate in the East China Sea. Pirate Kyle. Drake, clutching the life card, murmured thoughtfully. The intelligence shows that he was rewarded by the Navy because he injured Navy Captain Smoker in the port of Rogue Town. Then a few months later, he transformed himself and became a member of the 7 Warlords of the Sea. I originally thought he was a minion sent to the East China Sea by the Don Quixote family. I didn't expect that he would be the Marshal's confidant. Before coming to the East China Sea, Drake and his team were naturally well prepared and had already done their homework. This information that is laid out in the open is not a secret to them. Seeing Kyle's figure getting farther and farther away, Drake immediately whispered an order. Come on, let's follow them. A group of 3 people followed Kyle not too far away, and soon arrived at the port of Rogue Town with him. At this time, what happened on the street had not yet spread here, so everything here was still normal. A few merchant ships were afraid of being robbed by the Dusk Pirates, so they left the port of Rogue Town in advance, making the place look a lot emptier than usual. Is that just you 3? Standing on the shore, Kyle suddenly stopped and looked back. At the same time, Drake and his 2 companions also came near Kyle. Drake loosened his fingers, and the life card suddenly floated up, slowly flew towards Kyle, and finally landed in his palm. Kyle smiled. But Drake and the other 2 stood at attention instantly. There is no need to say more. The movement of the life card is the most accurate instruction. Although there were many people around and they did not dare to act like soldiers, the faces of the 3 men were extremely solemn at this moment. Meet the captain. Drake Peacock Skylark, member of the sword team, reporting in. Chapter 90 Tyrannosaurus. Hello, nice to meet you. Kyle smiled slightly, but then he stretched out his hand and pressed it down, saying in a low-key manner. There are too many people here, I think, let's go to a quieter place to talk. You 3 come here and put your hands on my shoulders. What? Kyle's sudden order stunned the 3 of them. But they soon reacted and quickly stepped forward and put their hands on Kyle. page 97. Next second. Swish it.
Drake and the other two only felt a flash before their eyes. When he looked at the surrounding scenery again, he was shocked to find that they had actually left the port of Rogue Town and arrived on the deck of a huge warship.
This is...
Drake opened his mouth, slightly surprised.
Space-related fruit abilities.
As a Rear Admiral, he knew very well how rare space-related abilities were.
I didn't expect that my new captain actually possessed such a precious ability. But yes.
If he didn't have some ability, he wouldn't have been trusted by Zhangguo so much. Thinking of this, Drake quickly felt relieved.
After arriving on the Tiga, the three of them looked around nervously.
But Kyle immediately returned to his normal state after returning home. He stretched lazily, then introduced with a wave of his hand.
Alright everyone, this is the Tiga, my pirate ship. It's an absolutely safe place. Let's continue our previous conversation. Oh, right. Clap clap. Kyle clapped his hands in the air twice. In an instant, little Tiga appeared beside Kyle and gave him the warmest greetings. Welcome back, Captain Kyle. Ha ha.
Kyle smiled and patted little Tiga's head, then he looked at Drake and the other two and introduced them. Meet me, this is the ship spirit of the Tiga, little Tiga.
Since you are all members of Sword, you will be a pirate with me from now on.
It would be very troublesome on this ship without the help of little Tiga.
Kyle wasn't bluffing when he said this.
Now the size of the Tiga is so huge, and it grows and changes from time to time.
Without the guidance of little Tiga, it is easy to lose the room you want to go to.
Especially for someone like Zoro who has a very poor sense of direction. If it weren't for little Tiga's help in finding the way every day, he might never be able to get out of that huge cabin in his entire life.
However,
faced with Kyle's kind reminder, Drake and the other two were instantly shocked.
Ship elf. Drake blinked in shock. Peacock immediately bent down, looked at little Tiga carefully, and said with a smack of his tongue, "Isn't the ship elf a legendary creature?
I always thought it was just a story, but I didn't expect that there are really ship elves in the world." As she spoke, she slowly raised her head, and there was an inexplicable charm in her eyes when she looked at Kyle.
Is this the captain she will be in the future? He is really a man who exudes a mysterious aura.
The Skylark next to the Peacock also put his hands on his cheeks, like a little girl seeing a cute doll. His eyes lit up with excitement, and he stared at the cute ship elf intently. Fortunately, the three of them are elites who have received special training. Although my heart was in turmoil, I quickly calmed down on the surface. Kyle smiled at the three of them and said, in addition to little Tiga, there are many other interesting companions on this ship.
But since everyone is busy right now, let's wait until the welcome party tonight to let you get to know each other.
Well, I guess you already know some information about me, but I'd better introduce myself to you formally. As he spoke, Kyle took a step forward, and a dark light flashed in his deep eyes.
My name is Kyle. I am an agent of the Marshal's exclusive intelligence agency. I am currently the captain of the Sword team. Other than that, I do not hold any military rank. At the same time, I am also a fruit ability user.
Kyle's mouth curled up slightly. A bright and dazzling white light suddenly burst out from his body.
I can release strong light to attack, and I also have the ability to teleport.
The next second, all the white light suddenly disappeared, and Kyle began to teleport continuously in front of the three people. As Drake and the other two opened their mouths wider and wider, Kyle continued to introduce.
As you can see, I have multiple special abilities. And all of this was created by my fruit ability. I am a user of the imagination fruit, able to turn the power of fantasy into reality. My friends, almost all the members on this ship have gained various magical powers through my fruit ability. Imagination fruit. After listening to Kyle's introduction, Drake and the other two had no idea what to say. This was the first time they had heard that there were such powerful fruit-powered people in the world. Seeing the three people were silent, Kyle continued to smile. Before that, I need to confirm again. You guys probably have no objection to becoming pirates and joining the Dusk Pirates, right? Of course not. Drake immediately replied seriously.
Captain Kyle, we are all professionally trained, please rest assured.
That's good.
Kyle smiled slightly, and a light suddenly flashed in his eyes. Immediately, he stretched out his hand and said with a smile. So, from now on, you are members of the Dusk Pirates. Next, please introduce yourselves one by one as fellow pirates.
Pirates.
Drake and the other two looked at each other in silence and quickly adapted to their new identities.
Immediately, Drake, who had the highest military rank, took the initiative to step forward and said, Captain, my name is Drake, my rank is Rear Admiral, and I am good at frontal combat. I am also a devil fruit user. The fruit I ate was ancient species dragon fruit Allosaurus form. An ancient fruit ability? That's really rare. Kyle complimented at the right moment.
At the same time, his consciousness was invested in the system and he opened the backpack interface.
A rank, character card, Tyrannosaurus. Compatibility equals 75%. Success.
Seeing the prompt message pop up in front of him, Kyle cheered in surprise. He had previously tested the compatibility of this character card with many people, and the test results showed that no one had a compatibility score of more than 5%.
After all, there is a gap between humans and animals.
Originally, Kyle had been thinking of waiting for an opportunity to go to the little garden island and find a dinosaur with decent IQ to be his companion. But since Drake can fit this A-level character card, there is naturally no need for so much trouble. As expected, for this kind of character card, we still need to find an animal-type fruit ability user. After making a note of this feature, Kel immediately raised his head, looked expectantly, and asked, Can you show me your fruit ability? Of course can. Drake responded. As soon as he finished speaking, his body suddenly swelled and expanded. In the blink of an eye, a huge dinosaur with a huge body and thick skin appeared in front of Kyle. As expected, it is an ancient species that is even rarer than the natural type. It feels very oppressive. When Kyle saw the transformation of an animal-type fruit ability user for the first time, his eyes widened instantly and his body became inexplicably excited. But he did not forget the main business. After Drake transformed into the beast form, he immediately stepped forward and laughed. You really have a big surprise for me, Drake. It just so happens that I have a power in my inventory of imagination fruit abilities that is very suitable for you. I'll just give it to you. Kyle's consciousness moved, and he instantly clicked on the character card, Tyrannosaurus. In an instant, a purple light that no one except Kyle himself could observe flew out and merged into Drake's body. And this huge dinosaur, as if it had realized something, closed its eyes in an instant. Character card, Tyrannosaurus. Loading complete. Testimonials. It's on the shelves, and I'm a little nervous. Without further ado. Thanks to the Demon King, NSFW, Bookframe 20170902001046862, and Single Finger pointing to the sky for their support.
201907606182750703720670507020707030745092702219619931201220190. 20190727175750645 we 1627542341866811392 dirge 232512122 d maze 1220221014103406458yhtrhgs. And thank you all for your recommendation votes. Because there are so many people, please forgive me for not listing them one by one. Thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. Group photo on the shelves. Charge. 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 Chapter 91 Nightmare. Partner, X, Drake, Greymon. Qualification, A. Page 98. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 36. Total qualification, 360. Strength qualification, 120. Physical qualification, 100. Agility qualification, 80. Spiritual qualification, 60. This Tyrannosaurus character card actually has a total aptitude of 360 points?
It's 10 points higher than Dashigi.
Isn't this considered the top attribute of Grade A?
Looking at the Tyrannosaurus that is full of childhood memories behind Drake in the partner interface,
Kyle was suddenly filled with surprise.
After taking a rough look at the distribution of Tyrannosaurus's qualifications, he saw that it was not much different from his guess, so he directly closed the attribute panel and turned his attention to Drake in front of him.
At this time, under the power of the system, Drake is living a new, illusory, and wonderful life. In a trance, he seemed to have come to a special world and was reincarnated into a strange creature with a round and pink body. I don't know why, but he seemed to know it naturally. Since he was born, he knew that this was a place called the digital world, and he is now a Digimon Rollermon. Just like that, he became Balmon and began his adventure in the wonderful primeval forest. There are many different kinds of Digimon here, and Rollermon is one of them. But the digital world is also a very cruel world. Digimon can gain each other's digital experience through killing, and then strengthen themselves and complete evolution. As a Balmon, Drake has no combat capability at all and can only hide in a corner of the jungle, quietly absorbing the rare bits of experience scattered in the air. That's it.
After going through numerous hardships, he finally succeeded in evolving into an Agumon and officially joined the brutal digital war. After countless battles and killings, he devoured a large amount of digital experience and eventually grew into a huge Tyrannosaurus. The illusory experience came to an abrupt end at this moment. Drake slowly opened his eyes and looked around at where he was in confusion.
Everything returns to reality again. Captain Kyle, He opened his mouth and was about to say something. But Kyle suddenly stretched out a hand and stopped him from asking. He smiled and said, "How is it? Now you should have gained the power from the fantasy world, right?" Fantasy world. Was everything just now the ability of Captain Kyle's fruit? Drake was horrified, and his mind subconsciously tried to recall what he had just experienced. But for some reason, he seemed to be having a lucid dream at this moment. After waking up, everything in the dream becomes blurred and invisible as time passes. Only his combat experience and skills as a Digimon still remain in his body. What's going on? Drake felt strange. But Kyle, who has seen too many partner loading scenes, is very familiar with this. He stretched out his hand towards the sea and said with a smile, "If you're curious, you might as well test it directly. Release your power to the sea." My power? Drake, who had just loaded the character template, still felt a little unreal, but his body had already started to move honestly. The huge dinosaur suddenly turned around, looked at the distant sea with sharp eyes, and opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth. Everything is so natural. Super flame. A blazing fire suddenly appeared in Drake's huge mouth, and then it quickly spun, soon forming a huge fireball, which gushed out and hit the sea surface. Boom! With a loud bang, the originally calm sea surface suddenly became turbulent. Although Drake was only level 1 at that time, relying on his own impressive strength, the power of this super flame blasted a huge hole with a diameter of nearly 10 meters on the sea surface. The scorching heat quickly evaporates the surrounding seawater. In the blink of an eye, a surging vortex quickly formed under the mist of water vapor. After releasing a super flame, Drake just stood there in a daze, unable to believe that this was a move he had unleashed. The peacock and skylark following him widened their eyes and opened their mouths in surprise. But at this moment, a burst of applause suddenly interrupted the silence on the deck. Snapped, snapped, snapped. As expected of an elite of our headquarters, he possesses such terrifying power right after gaining the power of fantasy. It seems that it won't be long before you can become a strong man who can stand on your own. Welcome, Drake. Kyle smiled and held out his hand. Drake, who had already loaded the character template, officially became his own person. Although Drake may not realize it now, from this moment on, Kyle will replace the Navy and become the most loyal and trustworthy captain in his mind. Drake, somewhat dazed, turned back into human form and shook hands with Kyle in a daze. After dealing with Drake, Kyle's gaze went straight to Peacock and Skylark. Under his gaze, Peacock, the brigadier general, took a deep breath, puffed up his chest, then stepped out and said with a charming smile, "It's my turn next, Captain Kyle." Peacock, Commodore of the Navy, is also a fruit ability user like Drake. As she spoke, Peacock gracefully pulled out her weapon, a whip, from behind. Perhaps because there was nothing else to show off, she continued to speak. "The fruit I ate is called the whiplash fruit. I can command everything I whip, including inanimate matter. Although I may be a little weak in head-on confrontation, with the power of the fruit, ordinary pirates will not be my opponent. If there is a chance, can you let the captain see my strength?" Cough cough. "Next time I will definitely."
Looking at Peacock's proud figure, the ultra-low neckline, and the short skirt that just covered her hips, Kyle's heart suddenly surged. But fortunately he managed to control himself and thought of more important things. With a thought, Kel immediately selected the B-level character card Mosquito Girl in his backpack and performed a compatibility test on Peacock.
Soon, the result appeared, compatibility equals 65%. Another match.
Looking at the system prompt message, Kyle was delighted again.
He guessed it right. Although Peacock is not the user of any insect-type or animal-type fruit, as the user of the Whip fruit, she inevitably has a special personality. And the Mosquito Girl in One Punch Man also happens to have a super special personality. Different worlds, same XP, creating a combination that transcends species and worlds. 65% is not that high, but as long as it exceeds the system's standard line, you can load the character template. Kyle's mouth corners suddenly raised. He looked at Peacock again, first looking at her curvy body without any hesitation, then smiled slightly and said, "Are you the user of the Whip fruit? I think I have a fantasy power that belongs to you too." As he spoke, without giving Peacock any time to react, Kyle directly stuffed the character card Mosquito Girl into Peacock's body. Then, just like Drake just now, she closed her eyes and entered a fantastic dream. This dream is very simple. In the dream, she was an ordinary woman with strange habits, and she stayed in an independent laboratory. Her job was to serve as a test subject. Finally, after repeated tests by a strange scientist, she successfully evolved into a strange creature called Mosquito Girl. At this point, the dream ends. Simple and crude, but it left an indelible mark on Peacock's heart. As an S, she was actually controlled by them. For her, this was simply an extremely terrifying nightmare. Fortunately, this dream is very short and no memory is left after waking up. Otherwise, it would be really terrible. Chapter 92. The future is long. Sigh. Peacock opened his eyes again and shuddered violently, as if affected by the feelings left over from the character template loading. But soon, her attention was drawn to the new power in her body. Having had the experience of watching Drake gain the power of fantasy before, she didn't seem too surprised this time. But it's just on the surface. At this moment, Peacock felt as if she had become a queen who controlled mosquitoes. It seemed that with just a thought, she could easily control the mosquitoes within a radius of several kilometers to do anything. Unfortunately, because the Tiga was far away from the port and was stationed in the middle of the ocean, there were no traces of mosquitoes within several kilometers, so she was unable to test this skill. But in addition to this, Peacock also gained an incredible ability. That is, she can now draw energy from the blood sucked by mosquitoes to strengthen her body. Page 99. It's just like eating a devil fruit. Peacock couldn't help but sigh. At this time, Kyle suddenly opened his mouth and asked with a smile, attracting Peacock's attention. "How is it? Are you satisfied with this new power?" "Satisfied. Really satisfied." Peacock shook the waves on her chest, and the long braid in her hands was pulled stiffly in excitement. "The captain's gift is so perfect. I don't even know how to return the favor. How about tonight?" Peacock, who was 100% loyal to Kyle, took a seductive step closer to Kyle and threw him a wink. Under the pressure of the tube top, the surging waves formed a line of sky surrounded by white peaks, which was extremely tempting. "Tonight?" Kyle was stunned for a moment, then his eyes were instantly attracted by the alluring Peacock. "Fortunately."
Fortunately, he is usually surrounded by many beautiful girls, so he did not show any inappropriate expression. Otherwise, his prestige as a captain would be greatly reduced.
Kel coughed a few times. Ahem, tonight, I may not have much time.
We still have to hold a welcome ceremony for you guys.
We'll talk about it next time.
However, it must be said that compared with the mature Skylark, Nami and Dashigi, who are still developing, are indeed a little lacking.
Not to mention the rich lowly Hyan who is still changing from A to B.
If he hadn't been afraid of the mysterious power of 404, he might have really had some romantic ideas.
Oh, that's such a pity? Peacock glanced charmingly, but it doesn't matter, there is still a long way to go, and we have plenty of opportunities. Okay, we'll definitely spend more time together next time.
Oh, by the way, there is also a long whip weapon in the equipment room, which I also created using the power of imagination.
You can ask Tiga to take you there later. That long whip can greatly increase your fantasy ability. It is very useful.
Kyle pretended to be calm and explained some issues with the weapons. At the same time, he turned his attention to the system in his mind and checked the attribute panel of Peacock.
Partner, Peacock, Mosquito Girl. Qualification, B. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 30. Total qualification, 300. Strength qualification, 60. Physical qualification, 60. Agility qualification, 90. Spiritual qualification, 90. 90 agility and mental aptitude. After looking at Peacock's attribute panel, Kyle quickly thought in his mind. Highly sensitive and highly intelligent?
It seems that Peacock's main fighting method in the future will be to rely on controlling mosquitoes.
This is very similar to the ability of her whipwick fruit. But if we fight in the sea, it seems a bit unpopular. After pondering for a moment, Kyle suddenly opened the facility mall of the dock system.
After a little rummaging, he soon found a facility called the Insect Museum. This facility has a function similar to that of a livestock farm or an aquarium. It creates a space on a ship for insects to live and work. Originally, due to funding issues, Kyle never thought about installing this facility on the ship. But considering the combat capabilities of the Mosquito Girl, he felt it was necessary to consider purchasing an insectarium. After all, a character template like Mosquito Girl, who has the ability to become stronger beyond the system, is still worth cultivating.
What's more, the mosquitoes in the pirate world are very different from those on Earth.
By then, we can cultivate some mosquitoes with strong combat effectiveness and perhaps functional functions. It is a good tool whether for combat or gathering intelligence.
Now that you mention it, the upgrade of the Tiga should also be put on the agenda.
After muttering something in his heart, Kyle's consciousness left the system and turned his attention to the last person, Skylark. At this time, Yun-Kei, who noticed Kyle's gaze, stood at attention instantly, with anticipation flashing in his eyes, and reported to Kyle.
Captain. I'm Skylark, my rank is Lieutenant Commander, my specialty is sniping, and I'm good at using various technological equipment to fight.
Compared to the other two, Yun-Kei's self-introduction was very brief, and even his military rank was far behind the others. In comparison, her presence in this trio can be said to be out of place.
But... Kyle raised his eyebrows and looked behind Yunlark. Whether it was Drake or Peacock, both of them traveled light.
Only Skylark not only carried a large sniper rifle, but also a huge backpack on his back and a larger suitcase in his hands. Judging from all these bags, her words about making good use of technological equipment in combat were probably not just talk.
Are you good at sniping? Very good.
There is really no talent in this area in the pirate group at present.
Your arrival just fills this gap. Welcome, Skylark. Really?
Yun-Kei suddenly widened his watery eyes and blinked with joy.
Of course.
Kyle also smiled, and with just a few words he made the little girl smile. But in fact, at this moment, he was conducting a compatibility test on Yun-Kei's character card main in the system. As soon as the thought came to mind, a prompt message popped up instantly.
Compatibility equals 65%. Bingo!
Another one that barely passed the passing line. Kyle was delighted, and immediately said directly under Yunkei's expectant gaze.
Since both of them have received the gifts I gave them, you are no exception.
As soon as he finished speaking, Kyle directly loaded Mine's character template onto Yunkei. As always, before Yunkei could react, she was already immersed in the understanding of the character template.
However, compared to A-level Tyrannosaurus and B-level Mosquito Girl, C-level Main's understanding is much simpler.
After a moment, Yunkei slowly opened his eyes, and a sharp light suddenly flashed in his watery eyes. At this moment, she has transformed from a fledgling sniper to a battle-hardened sniper. Although she had no special abilities, her already impressive distance ability was further improved.
Partner, Skylark, Main. Qualification, C. Total qualification, 250. Strength qualification, 40. Physical qualification, 60. Agility qualification, 60. Spiritual qualification, 90. Total qualification 250? Hiss this number.
Looking at Skylark's attribute panel, Kyle felt inexplicably amused. Poor kid, it seems like he's been targeted by the system. But these 3 character cards that have been sealed for a long time have finally been given away.
Toolman plus 3. Become my strength now.
The 3 new members all became tools, and Kyle was a little excited at this time. After exchanging a few brief words with Drake and the others, he directly asked Little Tiga to take the 3 newcomers to the equipment room in the cabin to collect their respective equipment, and then go to the crew dormitory to assign rooms. As for Drake, who did not have any exclusive equipment for the time being, Kyle asked him to pick up a shallow shooting rifle. After all, it is a sea-level weapon, which can add 30 points to the total qualification. Although the increase brought by qualifications is not as overwhelming as that brought by Awakening Stones, it can still be attributed to Kyle. In today's Dusk Pirates, everyone is equipped with a system weapon, except Kobe, who has not yet loaded a character card. Zoro even directly held the Kusanagi sword in one hand and used the other hand to strike, although the Kusanagi sword was the only one that actually worked in the equipment column. Even Chloe wore the Skylark spare ring. Even though the name contains the word spare, an item that can be rated as C-level cannot be too bad. Looking at the backs of the 3 people leaving, Kyle's mouth curled up slightly in a smile.
Loading character templates is just a small surprise. There are so many things on this ship that can truly surprise people. I hope you can adapt quickly.
Master Kai, who had been busy all day, smiled, whistled, and walked towards the training room in the cabin. His armament hockey has already begun to take shape, so he can take advantage of these few days to polish it.
After Bartolomeo and Dezea get on board, they will officially set off for the Grand Line. Chapter 93 Duelist. Night. Page 100. The bright moon is reflected on the mirror-like sea surface, curving and extending to the invisible horizon.
The sky is filled with stars, like thousands of silver points inlaid in the quiet night sky.
Outside Rogue Town, on the Tiga.
With a round of clinking glasses and laughter, Drake and his 3 new members quickly became familiar with the members of the Dusk Pirates.
Drake was being pulled by Zoro and several men to clink glasses with each other, looking very happy. Come on, come on.
Drink this one, there are still 3 more. Peacock was in the corner of the dining table, teaching Nami and Dashigi how to become more charming.
You have to do this and do that again to make your breasts look firm and prominent. I'm telling you, all men are the same.
Even Habari sat together with fellow gunner Hyan, like a simple high school girl, constantly marveling at the miraculous events they encountered on the Tiga.
It's amazing.
The training room is so big, but from the outside, it looks like just a small room.
That's right, it's really confusing. Just like that, the 3 new members successfully integrated into the big family of the Dusk Pirates in a pleasant atmosphere.
And after learning about the magic of the training room, I decided to join the hard training team starting tomorrow.
In contrast, Kyle just smiled and said nothing.
But in his heart, he was rejoicing alone.
The tool man is officially on duty.
The harvest season has begun. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye it is already 3 days later.
After handling the gang affairs, Bartolomeo and Dezea arrived near the Tiga as promised. Under the whirlwind elevator of Little Tiga, the two came to the deck of Tiga with surprise. "Welcome, Barto, Desaya. From today on, please give me your guidance." Kyle and Little Tiga looked at Barto and Desaya with happy smiles on their faces. "Hello, Captain." Barto, who had just boarded the ship, was very quiet and no longer as arrogant as before. Be willing to admit defeat. Now, he truly regards Kyle as his captain. Later, Desaya learned about the gambling between Barto and Kyle, and he seriously suspected that Kyle might be using some tricks in secret. But think about it carefully. A strong man like Kyle could kill them with just one finger, but he still saved their face by making a bet to let them join the pirate group. They'd better stop being so shameless. In this way, Desaya finally kept some words in his stomach and did not say them out loud. And it might be very interesting to go out to sea as a pirate with Barto. After a brief introduction to each other, Barto and Desaya were, as expected, shocked by the identity of the Little Tiga ship elf. But there is a saying that goes, the less you know, the happier you are. Because both of them were the kind of people who had been uneducated since childhood, they were not too shocked by the matter of the ship elf, but just found it interesting. By the way, even the ability of the imagination fruit that Kyle later explained did not bring the two of them the slightest bit of surprise. Then, because both of them joined the Dusk Pirates sincerely. Kyle couldn't wait and turned his childhood sweetheart into his partner right in front of Barto. Online husband currently commits. Partner, Desaya, Peacock Dance. Qualification, C. Total qualification, 240. Strength qualification, 40. Physical qualification, 50. Agility qualification, 50. Spiritual qualification, 100. In an instant, Peacock Dance's character card was loaded. But looking at Desaya's partner interface, Kyle secretly smacked his lips. The total qualification is only 240 points. This is even lower than Skylark's 250. But Kyle paused, but his eyes turned to the other items in his backpack. These are the card props that are used in conjunction with the dual disc. I wonder if these prop cards will bring Desaya to a new level. After all, from the very beginning, the power of this character card was not the character itself. Half an hour later, in the training room of the Tiga. Come out. Condor Girl number 1. Following Desaya's call, a charming woman suddenly walked out from a holy light and came in front of Kyle. Oh. At this moment, Kyle and Barto, who was confused, exclaimed excitedly. Looking at the Condor Girl who had a pair of bird wings but the perfect body of a human woman, Kyle was so envious that a tear fell from the corner of his mouth. Why do we have to divide a dual disc between people? In the Yu-Gi-Oh world, everyone has a dual disc. He roared with unwillingness deep in his heart. Owning Digimon and becoming a Pokemon master in Dual City has always been one of Kyle's dreams since his school days. And his other dream is to become Hokage in the Soul Society of the Grand Line. Unfortunately, even after he traveled through time, it seemed that the realization of these two dreams was still a long way off. After suppressing his inner jealousy, Kyle forced himself to turn on the computer, allowing himself to once again display the dignity of a captain, and began to get down to business. He suddenly said, Desaya, let the Condor Girl attack me. Okay, Captain. A gleam of light flashed in Desaya's eyes, and she suddenly gave an order. Condor Girl, attack. Condor kick. At Desaya's roar, the Eagle Girl on the field suddenly leaped high into the air, then adjusted her balance with the wings on her arms, raised her sharp eagle claws, and grabbed Kyle. A sound of metallic friction suddenly occurred. The sharp claws on the Condor Girl's feet grabbed Kyle's arm, which was wrapped in armed color domineering. The Eagle Girl's face was distorted, and she tried her best, but still couldn't make Kyle move at all. And the next moment, the Eagle Girl suddenly changed her tactics. Of course, real-world battles cannot be turn-based like in anime. Next, the Condor Girl displayed a series of powerful physical abilities and even used her wings to stir up a violent storm. Unfortunately, under the absolute crushing power, her actions had no effect on Kyle. In the end, due to the dual power in Desaya's body, he was unable to maintain the summoning of the Eagle Girl, and the test ended.
probably has a combat power of around 3, comparable to a weaker billion-level pirate.
Kyle was quick to draw conclusions about the Condor girl.
The reason for conducting this test has to start with the duelist's combat mechanism. At this time, after loading the Peacock Dance template, Dazaya has officially become a modified duelist. And her fighting style is also very interesting. The first method is to use items from spell and trap cards. For example, for magic cards like Fireball, Dazaya can directly slap it onto the duel disc, and then launch a fire attack on the enemy.
No cooldown.
But the size and power of the fireball are fixed. Kyle guessed that this might be related to the level of the card.
Moreover, each fireball launched will consume a portion of Dazaya's duel power.
The amount of dueling power depends on the physical and mental strength of the duelists. The rules for monster cards are similar. Each monster card item can directly summon a monster, and it can be summoned again even if it is killed.
The strength of the monster is fixed.
Each summoning requires the consumption of corresponding duel power, and maintaining the existence of the monster also requires a small amount of duel power. For example, the Eagle Girl summoned by Dazaya has the ability to control the wind and has excellent close combat power.
The test just now proved that even if it is just a sea-level monster card, its strength should not be underestimated.
And because the duel disc has limited card slots, Dazaya can only use up to 5 magic and trap card items at the same time, and the same applies to monster cards.
That is to say, Dazaya's fighting ability does not actually depend on herself. It depends on what kind of card props Kyle can draw for her. In this regard, Kyle only wants to ask one question. Since you have the power to duel, why can't you print your own cards like the Pharaoh? Chapter 94: An Unexpected Journey.
Originally, Kyle planned to wait for Barto and the other two to board the ship, and then go directly along the Grand Line intersection near Rogue Town and enter the mysterious sea area known as the Pirates' Graveyard.
Alright legends, that's it for today. Like, subscribe, and I'll meet you in the next audiobook.